clearly everybody's here because of the 90s art. I see. It's yeah, it is. The thing is the 90s, and as we know, passed me by. I was not collecting comics during the 90s, so it's not an era that I'm really that I appreciate. A lot of the artwork I was gonna say most, but I'll say a lot of the artwork that we're gonna see tonight, I actually never read any of the books at all. I mean, I can't even say I have a very good understanding of some of the titles, but we're going to talk about them and we're going to have a lot of fun because I got Ben, and I did, I meant to ask Ben. I'm going to bring him in here. Ben, how are we doing tonight?
I'm fantastic, Bill.
But here's the thing: is it Bressel? Bressel? What is it? How do you pronounce your last name?
Bressel.
Bressel. See, now that's what I thought, because I think in my mind for the last 20 years I've always said Bressel, but I had this weird feeling as I was preparing for the show that it was Bressel. So now I've got it.
I answered either one. It's fine.
Oh, I understand, but I wanted to get it right because, as everybody knows, I butcher the last names with ease around here. So, and I meant that was like a question I had on my list, and I didn't even ask it before we got started. So welcome to the show, Ben.
Thank you.
20 years in the making, because we were just talking before the show. You are, in fact, ID number 73 on the site. So you joined in May. So the site did launch in February. So you were a few months, you didn't register right away, but you were right there at the beginning. I mean, anybody.
I don't know how I let that slip.
I don't know. Like you said, we probably met early on via email through the Comic Art L list. And, like you said, I was, we were all looking for the same place, and it turned out to be CAF. And so it worked out well at the end of the day.
Agreed.
So, let's see. So, let's get this other thing out of the way. I was going through my email and trying to figure out all the conversations that we've had, via email over the years. And I felt terrible when I discovered that back in 2019, I actually had asked you to do an interview with me. It was back before I was using this platform. And the idea back then was I was doing these recorded interviews, and I had asked you, and you had agreed to do it.
I was ready.
You were ready. This is, as everybody knows, my first 6 of these, I pre-recorded them and then had a painstakingly take 10 hours to then edit them and post them. By the time I did 6, I knew I never wanted to do another interview again. So Ben had agreed to do it, and his last email said, "How about next week?" And I didn't reply. So I don't know if it was something to do with Ben or if it was something I had just had enough at that point. But the intent was not to have you be the 126th or whatever it is, 23rd interview on the channel. So I do apologize for that, Ben.
I do not feel any affront.
Well, I'm good. I'm glad you feel that way, because I felt terrible the moment I read that, because I have a lot of emails like that where there's something left unsaid and I usually forget about it, but the email was still flagged. So, that's the terrible part. I had flagged it to reply to it, and I didn't do it.
Well, here we are now.
Yes, here we are. And so, hey, your friend Dave Kopecki, who I know he's been nudging you around. He's out there. He's in the chat.
Hey, Dave.
All right. So let's just get started. You've probably seen these interviews before. We always kind of start with the origin story. I know that we both started collecting around the same time, late 90s, early 2000s. So how did you get interested in original comic art, and really even comics, I guess, before that? I mean, what's the appeal?
Well, comics for me started with my best friend, Derek. We were 12, 13. So 1987, 88, 89, somewhere in that range. And he's like, "Come with me to Newbury Comics." And I'm like, "Comics? Really?" And he's like, "Yeah, they're great. Come with me." So I came with him one day and picked up an X-Men and Spider-Man and oh my gosh, there's 7 million titles and they're all amazing and I want them all. And that's when I already knew I had a collector's bug, but that's when my collecting focus turned to, wow, I can read all this stuff on a weekly, monthly basis. Yes, I will be at the comic store every Wednesday at 3:30 in the afternoon when I leave school, or the soonest my parents could get me. And then when I had my own car, the soonest I could get there. And from there, in 2001, when I graduated college, late, because I'm older than that, but I graduated college and I was starting to get back into comics, and I was trying to start a run of 9.0 plus CGC X-Men. And at the time, eBay was a fantastic resource. And I searched for some X-Men title, and up popped a Lionel Yu X-Men cover. I think it was Lionel Yu. And I was like, you can buy that? Wait a second. I can buy something that has 750,000 copies, or I can buy something that has one, and it's the one that the artist actually drew. And I think at that point, I remember finding Bashara again, because he was a friend of mine from volleyball here. And I found Bashara again, and I took all of my graded books and I said, what can I trade for these? And I have basically been in art ever since. I don't buy comics anymore. I just buy omnibuses, trade paperbacks, hardcovers, artist edition. I've got a shelf full of artist editions here. But I don't buy comics anymore.
Well, that's a very typical story, right? I mean, many of us, I only buy trades now. I just decided at some point, well, I mean, the art's more important and more expensive than buying the floppies. So yeah, I'm better off with them as well. But so a couple of questions here. Newbury Comics. So you were in Boston, I assume?
Yep. I grew up outside of Boston in a small town called Wayland, and Newbury Comics was in Framingham. And I was 2 miles from my house, and they would either ride my bike or get my mother to drive me, or when I was old enough, drive myself over there.
Yeah, that was a good story. I went to school in Beverly, Massachusetts. So I wasn't familiar with Newbury until I started making trips into Boston. And yeah, that was those were great shops. I mean, Newbury Comics was probably one of my favorite shops I've ever been in. Always enjoyed going there.
And then I found there was a local store. I don't remember what the name of it at the time was. Now it's Bedrock Comics, which is still there. And I still go periodically, and Jack is still my buddy. And, he still sells me the IDW books. And I'm still, he's still like, we schmooze and talk. And every time we go in there, what's the state of the industry? How are comics? What's art? And he's still a good friend after 30 years of collecting, and now 20 years of not even buying comics, but still enjoying each other.
So, when you were making that transition, what was, so the X-Men were a clear title of interest.
Yes.
But as as I have seen from your CAF gallery, I mean, there were a lot of other titles from the 90s and maybe even some 80s stuff that appealed to you as well. I mean, were you heavily collecting comics throughout the 90s, such that that's the area that you kind of have a focus on, I guess, or what's the appeal?
So I think the 90s for me is a massive appeal because I was in high school, and I was in high school 89 to 93. So Image, X-Men, Fall of the Mutants, Inferno, all of those storylines were just jaw-dropping, and the art was amazing, and the stories were epic, and I was loving it, and I loved it. And when Image started, and Liefeld and Lee and Portasio and McFarlane all jumped ship, I was like right on board with them. I was like, I will buy every title. And when I left in 93 to 94, I went to Israel for a year. And during that year, I had my local comic store hold every Image title. I didn't know how I was going to pay for every Image title, but I had to hold every Image.
And they did it for you, though. That's amazing.
Yeah, and they did. No, that was the time of I had a box in the back, and they just put it all in the box. And when I came home, I started working for the summer or whatever, and I went in weekly, and I bought $100 worth of books or whatever it was, and I got Gen 13, number 1, 2, 3, 4, blah, 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 and all of the on and on. And I ended up with some really amazing books. But then I was brought again from 95 to 98, and I missed a whole bunch of stuff. So I missed The Matrix coming out on and I missed a genre of that whole half a decade, basically, I missed. But I enjoyed, so I went back and bought all the back issues when I got back. And I was in university, and I was close to New England Comics, which is, I don't know if you remember that from when you were here. And I would just go in there every week and buy a bunch of back issues and catch up as best I could.
Well, that's
Image really was, for me, like, the art just blew me away. So at that point, when I started collecting, I went after Travis and Jim Lee and all of the names that that you've seen in my CAF that Dave and I talk about every day. all of those names I went and searched and found in comics. And then when artwork arrived, it was like, well, I'm going to go for the stuff that I loved as a kid. So Travis, for sure. You know, everybody knows Travis is my guy. I love Travis. So I go after anything Travis, and specifically Wildcats, because that was the title of my youth for me.
So what's the last couple of years been like for you? I mean, with prices going where they're going, and specifically, and a lot of the titles and the as well as the artists that you appreciate, their work's been going up, like, you know, going crazy the last couple of years. I mean, it's been challenging, I think, but the 90s art is really where it's been at. I think, you know, whenever we do a market, you know, kind of market recap or an auction recap, it's always seems like the 90s art is seeing the most growth, you know, in the last 3 to 5 years, primarily because, I mean, I don't know, well, there's many reasons for it, but that's a tough spot to be a collector these days.
It really is. And it's disheartening, and it's amazing. And it's a little bit of like, okay, if you look through my sold gallery, which I love leaving up on there, you see all of the stuff I should never have sold, right? Every single piece in there is a piece from the 90s that is gold now. Jim Lee X-Men pages, Travis covers. I mean, just amazing things that if I had it all now, you know, Liefeld, I had the best Liefeld piece there ever was. And I couldn't sell it when I wanted to sell it. Nobody wanted it. Right. And now it's $1 million piece. So,
right.
You know, well, I mean, what can I do? Like, you know, at the time, Jim Lee X-Men pages were coming around every few months, and they were $250, and it was no big deal to get another one if I sold mine.
Mm-hmm.
So at the time, and, you know, if I wanted a Travis cover, I would have to sell a Jim Lee X-Men page. So I did, because they were available and they were relatively affordable. Do I go back?
You knew you could replace them?
Sold it? No, because I needed something that I wanted more at the time.
Yeah. No, I figured that was probably how you felt, but I mean, that is the challenge, right? I mean, today you can't replace those pieces. It right. Felt, you know, say in the early 2000s, or even up till about 2014, it felt like you could pretty much replace almost anything that you were going to sell. But yeah, these days it's like, if you sell something that you really like, it's going to be hard to find a comparable piece that isn't more than what you sold your piece for. Agreed.
And the minute you sell your piece, everybody knows how much you sold it for, and it will never be less than that.
Yeah, isn't that interesting? I mean, well, it's funny. Our hobby, you know, as I don't know. I mean, it's growing every day. I think we've got new collectors coming in, but at the same time, it's when something sells, everybody does know what it sells for, even if they're not a friend of yours or they're directly related to it. It's like with thanks to social media, Facebook, texting, who knows that once it will get out. If there's a piece that you sold or a piece that you bought, everybody seems to know it. And I don't know if that's a bad thing or a good thing, because, you know, back in the day, I mean, that was probably always something that buyers or sellers kind of had as leverage, was not really allowing other people to know what things went for. But now, yeah, I mean, I'm just shocked. It's like I say something that I think might be a secret to somebody, and they're like, oh yeah, you know, blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, son of a gun. I mean, I thought I was the only one that knew that, you know, or I was a small handful of people that knew that. No, it's never that way anymore.
Agreed. And it's a little disheartening now that things are so expensive, because the things that I really enjoy are things I have a very hard time buying.
Right. Exactly. Yeah, Michael Callahan wanted to know if you had bought from Wildstorm Fine Arts back in the day.
No.
Was that before you?
I think it was, maybe it had just ended right before I started. I think they ended in 99 or 2000, and I came in on the scene right after that. Had I been around at that time, I would have bought everything I could possibly have gotten my hands on, because the stuff, when I see those old catalogs, even then, it was dirt cheap.
It's crazy how, but it was before my time as well. I mean, I didn't know anything about Wildstorm Fine Arts until the early 2000s, probably from finding old catalogs or something on eBay.
Right. And then years ago, I decided, I was like, why did I never hear about this? And I went back and I looked at a bunch of old Wildstorm books, and there are ads in the back of the books for Wildstorm Fine Arts. Send away for the catalog. And I just didn't even know. Did I not know what it meant? I probably didn't know what it meant. Like, oh, you can actually buy the artwork. I didn't know that.
It was kind of a smart setup. It definitely was. But when Scott Dunbier wanted to move on, I mean, he just he like Marcus says, they sold out Des Moines. Well, I mean, that's not exactly how it happened, but yeah, Scott, I'm sure Scott's very happy with what, he's doing over at IDW. At the end of the day, Scott's, he was a dealer for a very long time before he switched over to doing the Wildstorm fine art stuff. And then I'm sure he's been super happy with, again, he's putting together artist editions, right? I mean, that's like one of the best. Yeah, I mean, that's one of the greatest assets that I think have happened in the last 10 years as far as collecting goes, is just being able to have those available. And I've only gotten my first couple though. I've seen them, but I've never bought one until recently. But they're the best. I mean, I appreciate all the work that Scott puts into putting those together. I mean, he's got a Holo scanner around with him all the time. I don't know how he does that when he goes to shows, but he's always got it with him with any shows that he goes to.
Well, Gabe and Dave Kopecki have inspired me to, every time I either sell a piece or move a piece, I scan it high res and I'll make a book out of it eventually, right? Mm-hmm. So I have hundreds and hundreds of scans. I'll make several books of artwork that I owned, and I'll put it in a book, and it'll just be for me. And so I don't have the art anymore, but that's okay. I can still enjoy it in its full size.
Yeah, that reminds me of one of the first time I interviewed Dino. He told me that one of the things that he's done is he takes some of his most favorite art, scans it, and prints it in a book. And he'll typically take that book around with him rather than taking a portfolio of art to show off. He's got these books that he's printed, at high res, oversized, and what a great idea, right? Because you don't want to travel with your best stuff, but if you're going to a meetup or something like that, now you've got this, a book that you've got your own artist edition for your collection of, right. Maybe he based it by theme covers or, Marvel covers, DC covers, who knows? But at the end of the day, I just thought that was a great idea. It's like the guys who don't hang their original art on the walls, they hang the prints that they've, right, just so they have that, the art in the safe or someplace safe.
Agreed.
So how about you? I mean, I see the art on the back walls there. I assume that's all original.
Yeah, it's all original. This one is right here. This is one of the ones I pinpointed that I sent you. This is my Joe Quesada Image Extreme Studios 9 cover set. The one right over my head is a sketch cover that my buddy Aaron Lipson got for me from Adam Hughes. I had sent Aaron a Quesada piece for his wedding because he married one of my best friends. And he sent me this back a couple years later. Turned out that Adam used it as one of his sketch cover books. I've got a Charles Vess Rose page, issue 1, page 1, a Rose is Rose this way, and a Dennis the Menace right here. And when we get to it, I'll take this down and I'll show you the Manabat that I have behind it.
Cool. So you like strip art as well? Then you got Rose is Rose piece.
Yeah, as a kid, I would just read the newspaper, the Sunday paper, and these were all really fun in the Sunday paper. And I figured if I can buy one or two of every one that I enjoyed as a kid, that I would do that. And since most of them are relatively inexpensive, it's pretty easy to not break the bank to get a Rose is Rose or a Dennis the Menace or a Garfield or a Heathcliff or those kinds of things. I think the only one I have yet to find, at least never having seen, is a Nancy. I've never seen, not a Nancy, a Kathy. I've never seen a Kathy. Never seen a Kathy in the wild. But everything else I've seen.
Huh. Yeah, that's, I don't think I've seen a Kathy either. But, I've always wanted a good Hagar the Horrible.
That's one of the ones I don't have. But I do have.
I've seen a few. I just haven't found like the right one. It's like, I'm holding out, for that or a Wizard of Id. I'd love to get.
I had a Wizard of Id. I sold it to Frank Giella, Joe Giella. No, whatever the younger one is. A couple of years ago, one of the shows. This one up here is a Broomhilda.
Oh, sweet! Those are. I love Broomhilda.
Yeah,
I'm jealous of that.
And I don't have a shoe either. I'm missing a shoe.
Shoe would be a good one.
They always seem to go for more than I want to spend at the time.
Right. Well, that's Mikhail just said he's got a nice Hagar Sunday. Well, of course you do, Mikhail.
Right. I have a story about Mikhail. He emailed me one day from my gallery. Maybe I put up probably a Jungle Adventure page for sale, and he emailed me and he said, I'll buy it. And I was like, great. And I said, where do you want me to send it? And he says his address and it's Brookline. I'm like, Brookline? I'm in Brighton. You want me to just bring it over? And I came, and of course, like, hours spent going through folios and enjoying each other's company and developing a friendship. And it was really fun to like, oh, a neighbor. He's like, oh, I just got into this, and his collection is amazing, of course.
Oh yeah, no,
Fantastic.
definitely.
But that was really fun, a fun story.
Dave Kopecki says that he needs a Hagar, a BC, and a Beetle Bailey. Yeah, I mean all of those. Yeah, I always forget about those strips like BC. Gosh, yeah, Beetle Bailey. Those are the best. But Shoe is one I always kind of I forget about that one. But it was such a good read. It was so intellectual back in the day. I was like, wow, this is really, for me when I was in my teens reading that, I just was like, this is pretty great. It was cool as Calvin and Hobbes that none of us can ever afford or
Right.
to get. But Shoe, man, that was always a really good one. I loved that strip.
Me too. When I tell people the price of the Calvin and Hobbes that just sold in Heritage, people are like, for a Calvin and Hobbes? I'm like, he's an American icon. What do you want? And there are like 10 in the wild.
Exactly. Yeah, that's the thing. But still, that's something where if there were 1,000 in the wild, they'd still be pretty sought after. I don't, I don't know. I mean,
well, like the Peanuts, right? I mean, Peanuts, there
right.
are
That's
thousands
true.
and thousands.
They have
They're
ebbed and
always
flowed.
going
Yeah,
crazy.
the value on them. I mean, remember them? They were going up really fast for so many years when the Peanuts estate was buying them to get them back in the museum and everything. And
Right.
they were, and I remember there was so much competition for those because you were competing against the estate. And I think maybe when they kind of slowed down a little bit, the prices might have leveled off or maybe dipped a little bit, but they're back to where they were at beforehand. So they're still still hard to get a good one, especially
Right.
an early one.
Right. Or a baseball, or a Lucy pulling the football out.
Yes, exactly. So I'm trying to read through the chat. Number one Marvel friend says he bought hot fries to read Andy Capp. Yeah, that's true. Very true. Yeah, Andy Capp was, to me, Andy Capp, I never laughed at. I could never, just the humor escaped me. It just wasn't a strip for me. But I always loved the art. It was one of those strips that I always thought was very unique in the way it was drawn. Even if I didn't really get it or enjoy the strip itself, I always read it, but it just wasn't for me.
Got it. I see that Simon says he enjoys my my vest hanging out there.
Yes. That vest hanging on the wall is amazing.
That was a hard one to get. I actually had to convince a guy whose name is Bill, whose last name I forget, but he had like cornered the market on Rose pages. And I was like, I really just need one. And he was like, all right, I'll sell you issue 1, page 1. I was like, fantastic. And it's been my wife's favorite since I bought it in 2000, whenever the year after it was published. And I've never sold it, even though the prices now are like 10 grand a page. It's my wife's favorite, so it stays here.
Right. Well, that's a good thing. It's always good when the spouse appreciates some of what we're collecting. It's such a unique hobby, but yeah, I'm always happy when Maureen enjoys something, that I've picked up, or, sometimes I'll get a piece of art for her too. So I like to include her in the hobby whenever I can. Same with the kids. I'll get a few pieces here or there for them. And I've turned my oldest daughter she's picked up stuff, either whether it was on a show that we've had, maybe like Dueling Dealers, if something doesn't sell, she'll come in and be like, that's the piece I want. So it's like, all right, it's the show is over, so I can buy it now. And yeah, I've probably bought her at least eight different pieces of art after shows have ended because she really wanted them. And that's fun. I mean, I think it's great.
The same thing. For a few years, Heritage had a bunch of like 5-page stories from like Richie Rich, Woody Woodpecker, Sad Sack, and they were Casper, and they were by Warren Kremer, and they were like $100 for 5 pages. And every auction, I would, like Wednesdays, I would just buy 1 or 2 for like, and so they're in this huge folio, which you can't see, but it's up there. And my girls take the folio down periodically, pull out the stories, and read through them. And I'm like, well, I could sell those for quite a bit now. They're like, please don't sell them, or I won't. Okay, I won't sell them.
Yeah, that's all. I used to buy my son Sonic the Hedgehog strips, or they were comic pages, but he loved them, and it was so amazing. Like I would find on eBay somebody who would be selling literally like 20 pages, and so and you just know they were going to go for a little. So I bought like 5 or 6 of those. So I have 3 portfolios full of Sonic. that I don't think we've looked at, he and I, in a long time. I should probably pull those out the next time he's around, and we should look them over because I have a lot of it. I've cornered the market on it.
Dave Barr asked, aren't Hank Ketchum, Dennis the Menace pieces expensive? And yes, they are. For whatever reason, I think it's because of the yellowing of this one. I got it for, I think, $350.
Wow.
Yeah.
And that is true. They do tend to go for pretty high, but everybody loves Dennis the Menace. I mean, that's the thing.
He's so funny.
Yep, without question. I'm not CJ says I'm an enabler. No. I'm just, hey, you gotta train them early to appreciate.
We were saying before, influencer. You're an influencer,
right? Even on my kids. So, but it's a good thing though. I mean, I like the fact that it's a hobby you can share. I mean, comics. I mean, my kids read comics, but they definitely, they're more into manga and other things. They've never really got into the superhero comics and things that I loved in the 70s and 80s and 90s. It's just not. It's like music, right? They're never going to enjoy the same music I like. But comics were the same way when they started picking up books. Whether it was me taking them to a comic shop, or usually would be going to a con. I mean, they were just finding just off the wall things that I would never have picked up. But so our reading tastes are very different. But at least in art, they know good art when they see it, and so they'll pick up stuff. My daughter Gwen has gotten things that she hasn't read it, doesn't know the artist, but she just loves the art. And I mean, I think that it's a great place to start, right?
For sure. Tell her that's going to be an expensive hobby. Comics are cheaper.
And yes, exactly. But so I mean, I guess tell me a little bit more about the I guess that period and when you first started collecting. And so were you doing most of your purchases on eBay? I mean, or were you reaching out to dealers? I mean, what was your how were you really getting into the purchase side of things?
I think right away it was eBay, but very shortly after that, it's a funny story. For years in college and high school, if I would come back from college or come back from Israel, I would play volleyball at an armory nearby. Mm-hmm. And one year I met a guy whose name was Pisharo. And Pisharo was a fun volleyball player and a nice guy. And, one day we were like schmoozing, and I was like, what do you do? And he's like, well, I'm a comic dealer. And I'm like, that's cool. And didn't think anything of it. And I was like, oh, I love comics, but nice guy. And then one day as we got closer, he brought to volleyball some things to show. One of which was, I think it was Superman #1.
Oh, wow.
And yeah. And the other was like the FF72 splash or cover or something like that. Mm-hmm. And they're sitting on the side of the volleyball, like on the stage that was next to volleyball, just sitting there in the back. He's like, oh, come take a look at these. You'll enjoy these. Take a look. And at the time, of course, Superman, I understood, but Fantastic Four 72 cover, or splash or whatever it was, I didn't know what that was. I was like, okay, that's neat. Here you go. And he put it back. Only years later, when Glenn finally told me that his name was Bashara and who Bashara was, and then I'm trading Bashara all of my books for art, that I finally understood what it was that he had brought to show. And so Bashara became a very big resource and educator and help in he'd be like, I found this modern piece. You might be interested in it. Yes, I am. Of course I am. It's a modern piece. I love it. And I would ask him about Jack Kirby, and he'd educate me on who Kirby was, what he drew, and on and on, because my collecting habits in comics had never gone back far enough to have ever purchased a Kirby. So Bashara he was my enabler. And then eBay, of course, and eBay at the time, I was telling my kids this tonight, eBay was a community for us. Like, I knew when you bought a piece, you knew when I bought a piece, I knew when Dave bought a piece, I knew when Albert Moy bought a piece, I knew when Dave Mandel bought a piece, because we knew everybody's handles and everybody. Mm-hmm. And then I could be like, hey, Dave Mandel, if you ever think about selling that piece, think of me, right? Because I could email directly from that. Now it's ephemeral. I have no idea who anybody is. It's not a community anymore. And that's where CAF is amazing, because when that piece shows up on CAF, I know where it is, and then I can keep tabs on it, and I can figure out if maybe I can buy it or trade it. But Comic Art L was also a huge resource at the time. Posting what I got. People would post what they got and what they have, and things for sale, and then the dealers were on there. I don't think I bought terribly much from dealers, really almost at all, except for Bashara. Because I didn't go to shows that much, and Bashara was local.
So were you like just going into his place to check out what he had? I mean, because I don't remember really what. I guess I don't really remember what his early site looked like. I mean,
Bashara wasn't online for a long.
I was gonna say
time.
He must not have been, because that's why I can't think of what it looked like.
Yeah, there was no. He had no site.
I can remember what Will Gabrielle's website looked like. I mean, you know, when we were all involved in the Comic Art L before there was a CAF. Right. I mean, I can picture that. I can picture. There's a lot of sites I can picture, but I can't picture Bashara's. So that's interesting.
It was easy to have a site at the time. You know, I had my own site that I would store all my stuff on before. You know, that's where I would store all my stuff before you took away the need for a website. Right now, we've got a centralized location where everybody can store their stuff. But there was, there was Horowitz. He had a website. Albert had a website. Did Albert have a website early? Maybe he was a little bit later. Horowitz, Mitch Ickowitz had one. And I don't remember buying from websites terribly. Blackline Fever had an early one, and it's probably still the same website as I recall.
I think it is the same. Yeah, I always forget to check that site out, because it's just so it's kind of like, well, there's that other site out there that's never changed since the 90s either. But right. Kazler mentions the old days, Foreigner 19.
Yes, Kazler, yes,
very true. Yep.
That was my website.com.
Yeah, that's funny. I forgot all about that. What happened to that? Did you let that domain go?
Yeah, I don't think I have that anymore. I didn't need it anymore. I had CAF, and there was no need for me to be like FTPing my files to a website that I would then have to edit the HTML to make it work, when I could just upload to my gallery. Yeah,
and Rich mentions Ken Danker had a site. Yeah, I mean, John Mancuda had a website. I mean, every person who really was in the market to buy art had a website, and they used it somewhat to market pieces they had for sale, but more importantly, they put their want lists out on it. That was, we didn't have the want list feature on CAF when we started, but I had probably put it on within the first year, because I realized everybody were maintaining their own websites to post want lists of things they wanted to buy, and I just thought, well, we're just going to have to incorporate that into CAF so everybody can just post them there. But it was fun. It was interesting back then. I mean, and I'm with you. I mean, the Comic Art L, I don't know where I'd be without the Comic Art L. I don't know if I would have ever made CAF if I hadn't discovered the Comic Art L as a community. And I don't even remember how I found it. like maybe I'd spoken to a dealer who said, maybe you should get on that mailing list and see what it's about. But I mean, I probably learned everything I needed to know about collecting original art from reading the threads during the Comic Art L. I wasn't a huge participant in it, because I was so early, and new. I didn't feel like I had anything worth adding, but I learned a lot. I mean, it was a great resource.
Yeah, it was for me as well.
And now we have Facebook and CGC forums and all these other places that that took it over. But it was fun early on. I mean, it was one of the more. That was actually probably one of the first online communities and only online community that I ever really participated in.
And I think that took over from the Lowry, as I recall.
Correct. Long box. I mean, there was iterations of whatever. I'd have to go back and look through my notes, because I have it on CAF somewhere. The history of the Comic Art L and how it where it started and where it ended up was all written down by somebody. And before that site went offline, I got all the copy. So it is out there somewhere. Kosser says the Comic Art L had the best flame wars. That's because Gary was in charge. When he passed it over to Dave Morris, things sort of calmed down a little bit better, I think. And remember Deputy Dave.
Yep.
Yeah. No, Dave was an interesting guy. I still see him on Facebook every now and again, but I don't know how often he uses CAF like he used to getting started. But it's funny all those names of people who really kind of kept the hobby going, and kept that forum going, or I can't even call it a forum, that mailing list going for as long as they did. They really loved it. It's like Brian Peck doing the best ofs before we brought him over onto CAF. I mean, there were people who really appreciated the hobby enough to kind of put a lot of extra time into it. And then again, we wouldn't be where we are today without all that extra effort.
Agreed. Mark Warenick says it was great to be able to contact buyers and sellers on eBay. That was how I made so many purchases. In fact, this purchase right here came from the guy who bought it on eBay. And he would say I stalked him, but every few months I emailed him and I said, hey, Are you ready to sell that piece? Are you ready to sell the piece? And he said, finally, he said, listen, clearly you want it more than I do. It's going to be better off in your collection. Give me this amount of money and I'll send it to you. And I was like, great, thank you so much. And it has been in my collection for 20 years or whatever it is since he sold it to me. But I could get in touch with him,
Mhm.
you know, and that was an amazing feature of eBay. I was sad when that disappeared.
Yeah, eBay's they always seem to shoot themselves in the foot with regards to new features and things like that. I mean, it made sense because they were probably in some weird way losing money by leaving people's, by giving you ways to contact people, but it didn't really fix anything. I mean, I remember I'd go to I won't say who, but I remember trying to buy a piece of artwork off eBay from somebody, and I don't remember what I messaged them, but maybe like, is it still available, something like that. And they were like, yeah, but let me deal directly with you. So people were they were taking their transactions off eBay all the
Yeah,
time.
for sure. And then they would do it in secret, like, oh, don't write in there that you want to contact me directly. Just say, do you offer local pickup? Then I can give you my phone number.
Right, exactly. Those were some of the best stories too. I mean, I remember like Tim Townsend would always get the best art. Remember, he was on the Comic Art L back in the day, and he would always brag about.
I got the Casada. Sorry, Bill.
Oh no, go ahead.
Master says I got the Casada from him. I did. Well, did I hound you for it? I feel like I hounded you for it.
Well, it feels like I should invite Kazra into the chat, right?
Yeah.
We could talk it out. So you didn't remember who you got it from? I
didn't remember. No, it was like 20 years ago.
Well, that sounds like something Kazra would say. If you loved it that much that you had asked him every other month for a year or two, that he would probably say it's better off with you if you definitely love it. And again, it's still there. He's looking at it right now.
He said yes almost right away because he was so convincing. I mean, look, I still have it. So, I mean, it was a pretty good sale.
That's funny. That is very funny. But yeah, like with Townsend though, because he was always, I don't know how he did it, but he would see when something went on there immediately, and he would go off and make offers to the sellers like right away, and he'd be like, oh yeah, I got this Alpha Flight cover or whatever, because I know people were bidding on it for 24 hours, but I made them an offer and they accepted it and pulled the auction. And you'd hear that stuff all the time. It was so frustrating. Not that I was a player in a lot of those, but I'm sure that there was a level of like, dang it. I
definitely did that for Travis pages that I wanted that came up on eBay. And I was like, I would offer immediately, if you could, I would email them an offer and be like, hey, will you take $1,500 for this page? Yeah. Okay, great. Where do I cancel the auction? What people would do to protect themselves sometimes is they would relist it with a buy it now of what I offered. Right. Or maybe like $50 more. So I'd pay the fee or whatever it was. Mm-hmm. And then they would get protected from and be able to eBay would handle the transaction. But I definitely made offers and got them accepted. And
did you ever get burned by that? Like they relisted it and you weren't, and somebody else got it ahead of you? I mean, it could happen. You were ready.
No. Because they'd be like, all right, I'm putting it live right now. I'd be like, okay, click.
See, I never did anything like that. I was too naive. I either that or too frightened to reach out to somebody just to see if an offer would be taken or something like that. There you go. NSN mentions that if someone new posted OA on eBay, the first thing to do was email if they had any other pages.
Right. Oh, I did that.
Yeah. Well, especially whenever you would see those local drop-off eBay stores that would get, they'd post a piece of art and you knew they didn't know what the hell it was. They weren't describing it, but they had like, they always had like the same logo. So you knew it was like a local drop-off. I always imagined that place was inundated with, what else you got? That you haven't posted yet, just to try to, why not, right?
Or like estate sales. If it said, this is an estate sale.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, what else do you have from that estate sale?
Right. Yeah. I mean, but I get emailed all the time from, not all the time, like once a month, I get an email from somebody who picked up stuff at an estate sale asking, where's the best place to sell this, and and things like that. So there's art out there that is definitely still coming out of the woodwork from strange locations, estate sales being one of them.
Yep, for sure. For
So
sure.
I'm just reading through. I want to make sure I didn't miss anything. You're reading them as well. That's good. I forgot to tell you to make sure you were on the live on the
Yeah, for a
comment
second I
side of
couldn't
things.
see it because I was on our private side, but then I,
Yeah, I don't know. They shouldn't default it to that. Nobody uses the private chat, but
Rich Cirillo says if you had Charest art back in the day, then you'd hear from Ben. It is true. It is definitely true. And I probably bought all of them except for the ones that I couldn't afford. And then Mandel or Joe would buy them.
yeah, well, his art was always I thought tough to get. I mean, I was never really a buyer for it, but it was always interesting to watch, how quickly that stuff would get, picked up whenever there was anything on the market.
Yeah, at the time I recall in gosh, it must have been 2001. I first found that I could find Travis artwork. It was like pages they started at 100, then the next month it was 200, then it was 300, then it was 600, and it was like real fast. It was real fast. And I was like, oh, shoot, $600. That is a lot right now. When I could buy a Jim Lee for 250.
Mm-hmm.
X-Men page with characters that I wanted for 250. It was like, I could buy 3 Jim Lee X-Men pages or 1 Travis page. Oh, that's tough.
I get it. His market really did go up really, really quickly, but his artwork, his style was so unique that it was he was very deserving, I think, to see his market go as high and as quick as it did, because again, it just his work stood out. You were like, my gosh, why he's putting too much time into these pieces. They're just immaculate. And then when he was doing color, he would add color to some commissions or those types of things. It would blow your mind. And yeah, I mean, so because he was doing that before Adam Hughes was going out. I mean, Adam was selling well, but when Travis was selling, I mean, he just kind of he made your jaw drop when you'd see new pieces he would make and what they'd sell for. It was just shocking.
For sure. I actually just had this discussion with Shay and Dave the other day about commission pieces versus published pieces. And, they're like, well, should I get this commission from this artist and this? I'm like, I don't do commissions. Like, I am purely nostalgia driven. Travis drew Wildcats. I want Travis on Wildcats. He did commissions for other people that are beautiful. I don't want it.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not I don't know. It's all about nostalgia for me. It's the titles I read in those formative years, in those development years, and pretty much not much else.
Well, so you're more a published art collector than commissions, convention sketches, anything like that.
Correct. I mean, I have a bunch from Travis of things that he did for me. If I bought a piece directly from him, he would send a sketch along or that kind of thing. But unless it's like dirt cheap by an artist I must have, I'd rather spend my money on a published piece.
Yeah, that's true. I seem to remember people would post or share like a gifted piece of art that Travis would do, whether like it was a head sketch, a space girl, or something like that, when somebody would make a purchase. I mean, it was just something that I remember seeing some people post additional things. I mean, that's always nice. It shows they appreciate what you're doing.
Yeah,
what you're paying.
Mike says, if you gentlemen still have these $250 Jim Lee X-Men pages, I'll be happy to take them off your hands for free. Yeah,
very generous of you, Michael.
Very generous. And those are the pages that I sold for $500 a couple of years later and felt like, listen, I just doubled my money. And I held on to a Jim Lee page for a couple of years, enjoyed it, and doubled my money. Now that same page is a $20,000 page.
Yeah, no, I did the same thing with John Byrne Uncanny X-Men pages. I'd buy them for $2,500. I'd sell them 2 years later for $4,500, and I thought I was doing great, right? Or I'd done well, and I wish I had all of them back.
But you know what? You had done well.
I did. Well, that was it. Yeah, right. For that time, it's like, wow, I'm going to get almost double my money. I mean, on something in the thousands, that's crazy. Because that would have been like, maybe I bought it in 2005 and sold it in 2007, something like that. And I mean, for 2 years to double your money. Yeah, that was fantastic.
I mean, you can't do that in the market.
Nope. No,
I remember buying there was a Heritage Fire sale one year, 2003 or 4, and I bought a Leonardi Spidey 2099 cover for $550.
Ooh.
I was like, this is fantastic. I mean, I haven't seen any, and I finally found one, and it's dirt cheap, so I'll buy it. A few years later, somebody emails me and says, I'll give you $2,500 for it. And I'm like, well, I just made 5 times my money. I mean, that's pretty darn good, right?
Mm-hmm.
So then I send it to him, and within like a week, it's on eBay, and it sells on eBay for $3,500, right? And I emailed him after, and I said, congratulations, that's a great sale. And he goes, oh, I was so worried you would be upset with me. I'm like, why? I made 5 times my money. I'm like, you made 1,000, I made 2,000. I'm good. You know, if that was your play, that's fine. You made me an offer I was happy to take. I'm good.
Oh man, but I don't know. I'd be frustrated with that. I mean, he didn't tell you it was like his grail, right? And he had to have it.
He did not make any like, oh, I love this piece, I must have, like Tim Townsend told me stories of that. Like, I must have this piece. You know, it's got to be in my collection. And then it would be on eBay a month later, and he'd be like, well, I sold it to you because it must be in your. This piece had to be in my collection, right? And it still is, right? And those guys who sell them on eBay, that's duplicitous. I don't like that. But if the guy made me an offer out of the blue, and a very good offer, and I took it, I was happy with what I made.
Yeah, I guess I'd still be a little upset.
Why? Because you leave money on the table for you?
I don't know. I don't. Well, because they're not. Well, whatever. Right. At the end of the day, once you sell it, the person can do anything they want with it.
Right. It's not mine at that point.
Right. Right. But that was. But yeah, you've heard the same thing. I mean, I know it happened to Tim. I remember he had voiced displeasure with people buying art, saying it was they got to have it. I mean, I've heard of dealers doing that to other dealers too, where they'd be like, I've got to, trust me, these babies are ones that I want for my collection. And then, a month later, they're in the hands of a dozen different collectors, and so dealers have had, run-ins with each other just for similar reasons. So but again, oddly enough, I don't think it's something that, at least I don't hear negative stories about that as much today. I mean, maybe everybody's a little bit more savvy, so they don't use that line on people as much as they did back in the early 2000s and before then. But yeah, I remember some people getting really upset by those by those sorts of things.
Right.
But we're always the thing is, in some weird cases, I'll bet you it was true. It's like, as collectors of original art, we're always looking for that next thing, right? And some of us, not all of us, but you're always like, you get it, and it's like, wow, but there's another. They call them squirrels, right? I mean, there's another bright shiny object over there after I got this one, and I'm ready to move on to the next one already. So
the beauty of there being only one is that if you sell that one, if that one comes along, and then the next page arrives, and it's a page you wanted more, well, until then, this was your grail.
Right. It's true. Oh, and Dave says, when that happens to you enough, it doesn't bother you anymore.
Yes,
I get it, Dave. That's I do understand. See, maybe because it hasn't happened to me, I don't have a.
Mike Callahan asked, Ben, do you have any Holy Grail pages that you are still after? That I haven't already had in my collection and let go? Yes. If you know the Travis's New Horizons covers, of which most of which are sitting in Joe Lee's collection, those are my grails. If Joe said to me tomorrow, give me everything in your collection and I will trade you all of my New Horizons covers, I would do it. Right? Those are, and I may never get them, but those are the things that I've always been like, this is what I must have.
Yeah, that's those are tough. I mean, for me, I don't think I have anything in particular that's like I gotta have it, but that's cool. I mean, it gives you, being a collector of Travis's work, I mean, it makes sense that you would have something out there that has been unobtainable,
right?
Up until this point.
And at each stage of my collecting affordability, what I could afford, I've just not been able to afford one. Right, just like one recently sold in Heritage and then World of Wildstorm. Yes, they are. One recently sold in Heritage, and my top bid was $40K, and I was like, the minute it went over $40K, I was like, I'm done. I cannot spend another penny on it. And luckily, it didn't go for $42.5. Just like one increment beyond what I could spend. But again, it was just enough that I couldn't do it. And I remember 20 years ago or whatever it was, right when Joseph Melchior and I were really working hard to find Travis of that caliber. Albert had one for 8,000 or 10,000, and like I could afford 6. So like just Like, and I couldn't get Albert to take the trade I wanted to, like, I'll give you 6 cash, and how about these 8 pages? And he's like, no, I don't really want those. This is this is a Grail level item. Yes, it is. And I'm really trying to get it. But at each stage when I could potentially have gotten one, they were just beyond what I could get.
I mean, that's tough. But the thing is, it's probably, the way you're making it sound, it's like they're almost always going to be just out of reach, unless it's in the right person's hands where you might be able to work out a deal.
Right.
But there's art like that now. I mean, especially in today's market, that I look at stuff and I'm like, I might not ever be able to afford one of those again, because they're just a little bit more than I'm comfortable spending. Yeah, Mikhail echoed your sentiment where he says, I sold a piece to a dealer for my price and they flipped it immediately for more. And I was really pleased that everyone was satisfied in the deal.
Yeah. I mean, that's all of arbitrage, right? I know that this thing is worth more over here, so I'm going to spend less over here to get it, and I'll bring it over here and they'll pay me more. Fine. I was happy.
Yeah. No, I mean, I get it. I definitely get it. So I'm just trying to make sure I don't miss anything here. Sometimes you have to pay the future price to bring it home today. Yeah, Mark, yes. That's true. And a lot of sellers use that very line when they're talking about, letting a piece go. They'll say, you're paying next year's price, but that's what I want. And, at least they're honest about it. And I think that, because, at the end of the day, a lot of, whether it's another collector or it's a dealer, I mean, a lot of dealers are collectors too. So they view it that way. I mean, everybody knows they can't replace something. So sure, if they're marking them up 20%, 25%, 50%, if you really want it, you're gonna pay it.
I have definitely said, when people have made me asked about pages, I've said, listen, the market value of this page I know is, and I'm making this number up, $2,000. I want 8 for it. If you're willing to give me 8, I'm willing to. I know that's not the market price, but that's my let it go price. And sometimes we're like, okay. And now those pages are, whatever. But if you're going to try and make me let it go, it has to be worth my while. Right. And it might be next year's price or 2 years from down the line's price, but it'll get there. And that's what I need. So, like you said, they're one of a kind.
Exactly. And I get it. I think that, the real issue is there's always somebody who will pay that price. You might not be able to find them, but they're out there. I mean, I had an incident with my good friend Mike Berkey where I found a piece of art that I wanted to buy, and I'm like, I know this piece is only worth $250, but he's like, I have a guy that offered me $1,000, and I'm like, that's impossible. Why would anybody do that? And so he's like, I got to sell it to the other guy, but I just can't do it. I mean, because he really wants it. He feels like he has to have it, and I'm like, well, I said, well, screw it. I'm going to take it at $1,000. But I said, but just remember, I'm overpaying by 4 times what this thing is worth, because that one guy wants it so badly. And I mean, it wasn't even something special. But so the thing is, there's a buyer for every page that's willing to go over and above what the market should be at, just because they got to have it. I mean, but that's part of the fun of the hobby, I think, too, is just knowing that that there are things out there that you see that you just want to own really badly.
Rich says, today's overpay is tomorrow's bargain.
It's been feeling like that. Chuck Arnold says, dealers. Yes, exactly. Even good friends who are dealers, Chuck. I mean, Mike and I have a very great relationship, but at the end of the day, it does come down to, top dollar and in some cases keeping customers happy versus friends happy. So it's okay. I mean, we've all been there sometimes, and you just have to either pull the trigger or don't.
One of the things I used to do early on when things were less expensive was, if I wanted a piece that was out of my budget for whatever the month was, I would ask for time payments. That way, and that did 2 things for me. 1, it let me afford more expensive pieces. And 2, in case something else arrived within that time period that I had to have, I still had funds with which to do it.
Yes. Yeah, that's...
and I think it was Ken Danker who clued me into that little maneuver. Because I think at one time I wanted to buy a Pit cover from him or something, a Wizard cover, I think, of Pit. And he's like, well, just buy it on layaway, do it over time. And I'm like, well, I mean, I can't afford it. He's like, no, you can afford it over time, and it allows you to keep some funds available for other things. And I was like, oh, that's a really good idea.
Oh yeah. Yeah, no, it's I've learned a lot more about that approach, just from talking with other dealers and things. That's the dealers. I mean, everybody wants to accommodate buyers as well, but it's like when somebody stretches their time payments out for more than a year, and that piece is now worth 25% more. That's when the person who's giving you the time payments, whether they're a dealer or a collector, gets a little edgy.
Yeah.
That those are the challenges, I think. But I completely agree with you. I mean, that's the way you have to go. I mean, Troy, if you don't want to be without cash for 45 days, because God only knows what's going to come on the market those 45 days.
Yep.
Even at $1,000 page, you still want to be able to have that $1,000 ready for it.
Yep, for sure. I feel like these days, every auction that arrives, I'm looking at the next preview for the next two to make sure that there's not something in there that I want more.
True. Yeah, Dave Kopecki says that you were the one to teach him about time payments. It changed his life.
Dave and I became friends early on. I don't know, it must have been Comic Art L or maybe Comic Art Fans, but it was a long time ago that probably in similar time frame to meeting you, Bill, that he and I developed a friendship and we're literally, I'm not kidding, every day on the what about this? What about that? Are you bidding on this? What about that? Are you going to bid on that? I'm not sure. I know, Ben, I know you're into Stormwatch covers. If you want that, I'll back off. Well, Dave, I'll only go to 1,000. So if you see it hit more than 1,000, then you take it.
Right.
In fact, we just did that in Comic Link. The most recent one, there was this cool Travis Pepsi Man piece, which of course most people don't want, but it's a Travis, so I wanted it. And I said, well, listen, my highest is 1,500. If it goes over that, you take it. And it did, and he took it, and now I know where it is.
Yeah, there's I think that's a good thing, that you develop these relationships with other collectors, and you try to watch out for each other's backs, as far as maybe a piece comes up that you're not interested in, you're going to turn around and let them know about it. At the end, you're always going to put your, well, not in every case, but in many cases you put your interest first. If it's something I want, I'm just going to go ahead and buy it. But at least well, Chuck Arnold says, I like collusion, there should be more collusion. And in a weird way, it does keep prices down a little bit, but not in all cases. Again, because you don't know, you could be talking with another collector. There could just be one other collector out there that wants it more than you guys, and it doesn't matter what you guys decided on and where you're going to stop. As long as there's a third person out there willing to continue on, that piece is going to go for considerably more. So yeah, it's a collusion. I mean, at the end of the day, I mean, it's one of the few things maybe holding some prices back, at certain auctions. But I'm sure in most cases that those pieces still sold for more than what people were expecting. So Stanley, is there any art to show? Yes, there is. We've been talking for almost an hour, so we should probably start looking at some art. Oh, and Josh knows which piece you're talking about.
Is this art not enough for?
Well, it's funny that piece is I actually made a detail image of that piece on the back wall there. So why don't we go ahead and just start looking at some? I know that was an early piece. That was your fourth slide. So we'll just start looking at some art here and talking about it, because first up we got the Rising Stars artwork. Yeah.
So this is an amazing piece. A Rising Stars was, I think, in the early 2000s, a book from the early 2000s that just was so well done. I loved it. The epicness of the story and the art, especially Q's original, I think he was in the first 3 or 4 issues. His art was just so crisp and so beautiful. And if anybody knows me well, these interlocking covers are my kryptonite. So when I saw this, Adam, I forget what his last name is, but his eBay handle was Warlock, Adam Levy or something like that. He had these for many years, and I could not get them from him. And when they finally went on Heritage, this is one of those, was like, okay, nobody's outbidding me for this one. So I bought it, and I've loved it. It's just a fantastic set of pieces. Yeah, Kyucha, that's his name.
Yeah, they were. It was a great read, and I think it came out in '99, around there.
99?
Yeah, but I enjoyed the book a lot too. Straczynski was, I already enjoyed him from Babylon 5 and a few other things. So no, I mean, I was hooked the moment I saw the the first article, probably in Wizard or something about it, and I read them all. I loved it. So so this one you were like, I'm getting it no matter what. That was the approach.
Yep. And I've had it for years at this point, I think. And I just love it. The only problem with connecting covers in these massive pieces is it's so hard to find a place to frame and put them on the wall.
Very true. So when did you pick this one up? Because you added it to your CAF gallery only like 3 years ago. So did you get?
I think that's when I got it.
Oh, you got it then? Okay.
Yeah.
There should be a lot more views on it. There's only 455 views on this piece. How is that even possible?
Maybe people aren't looking for Rising Stars that much.
Well, I mean, it only lasted like 4 or 5 years, I think. But
yeah, I think it was 26 or 28 issues or something like that was the whole series. And I think after Q left the series, the artwork, like in terms of like, Q is very 90s and very dynamic. And then it went to John Livesay, I think, who's also an amazing artist. Christian Zanier, and then John Livesay inking him, and then on to like Brent Anderson, which is just a much different. To me, his art didn't fit the dynamics of the series so much, whereas Q's was very, very fitting and very appropriate to me. So I focused on his. I haven't bought a single one from any of the other artists, even though I love the series. It was very well written and well executed.
Well, it's about the art, right? At the end of the day, I mean, you got to match. And I agree. I mean, I think his art was so well suited for it too, that it was very unique at the time. I remember, that what was that one cover with like the giant fireball and the little kid in front of it. I mean, those were.
I owned that one too at the time. At one time.
Oh yeah.
It was so funny because I owned that one, which was the preview book, and then I owned the Zero edition, which actually it comes just before the beginning of my 4 covers. And at some point I was like, well, I'm never going to get the 4 because Adam doesn't want to sell them. So why am I holding on to these 2? Right.
I get it. Yeah, I love that image though. It was there were just so many good things that came out of that series. I thought. I mean, imagery wise, story wise, it was fun. It was really, really fun.
I agree. And the idea of like, these superheroes being empowered and then the energy moving to each one as one died, moving on, and then they get more and more powerful, and then one of them is a villain. It was really a great idea.
I completely agree. All right. So next piece, of course, is by John Cassaday. This is a planetary, and this is a book I've never read. I hate to say it and it's something that I've always wanted to read. I hear such great things about planetary, but I never have read a single issue of it.
Bill.
I know. Hey, I hadn't read Excalibur either. And
I can deal with Excalibur. I can't deal with planetary. It's the best. I mean, in my opinion, which is, we'll take it for what it's worth, it's the best read in the last 20 years for me. It's perfect.
Well, that is, trust me, I have heard that from everybody, and I have I don't know, I've just avoided it. I don't know why. It's not because I don't want to read it. I really want to read it. I've always loved Cassaday's work, and every piece that comes up on CAF is just remarkable. I mean, the art is, I have no idea the story, but the art is simply amazing.
Mikhail says, Ben used to have another great planetary piece as well. I still do. It's actually on consignment with Bashara. But it's the other trade paper, one of the other trade paperback covers, double piece. If you can see, Bill, I don't know if you can see, like right here is my planetary omnibus.
What's that?
Right there. That's my planetary omnibus. That it just holds a prominent position because I read it like 5 times a year.
All right. I know what to ask for Christmas now. I'm going to talk to Maureen after the show's over. It's like, I have to get this, but this image is just fantastic. I mean, it
encapsulates the whole series. It's got an image from like every one of the first 12 books or 15 books or something. It's got all the main characters, and when it came up for auction on Heritage, I was like, okay, I have to win that, because I figured in my mind, since I can't get the covers from the original series, like the ones I would want, this one encapsulated everything. And I was like, I'm going to go get that.
Well, it's gorgeous, and yeah, and a lot of people are shaming me still in there. The omnibus is like $40, Bill. Easy buy.
Colin
All
says
right.
Excalibur is greater than Planetary. Okay, fine. I'm not going to argue. I loved Excalibur as well, but to me, the writing and John's execution of the art, and every little page has some subtlety of history of comics that they incorporated just so well. It's just every time I read it, I'm like, this is amazing.
I might just have to buy it myself now.
Text Maureen right now.
Great. Yeah,
Here's
she's
the
not
link.
watching tonight apparently, but yeah, no. All right, I'm gonna do it. Trust me, I don't know why I haven't already, but
then you're gonna have to report back to us how much you
I
like.
will. I happily will. I mean, I read Tatiana sent me the first the 3 issues of Excalibur when she learned that I hadn't read it. So I don't think I gave a report, but I read it and it was good. But that's all I've read so far. But at least I delved into it a little bit. I always like the art. Again, it's back to I see the art on CAF, but that's kind of my problem. There were many books from the late 90s into the early 2000s that I just didn't read because I wasn't buying comics then. So I missed out on a lot of stuff, mostly in the 90s though, because
Right.
I graduated college in 91 and didn't really start buying books until about 98. So that's why I missed all that Wildstorm stuff. I mean, it just, I didn't understand it. It just went by, it was such an important or an interesting era in comics history. And I didn't know a darn thing about it. The Age of Apocalypse. I've said this before. I had to go back and reread them. I didn't know what this whole amazing storyline was all about. So
yeah, that happened
I regret it.
When I got back from Israel. My best friend, I came to his house and he's like, "Did you see The Matrix?" I'm like, "The what?" And he's like, "You haven't seen The Matrix? Sit down."
Oh man, I did see that when it came out. I mean, I was still, but that was funny. I don't know. I can't remember what it was. Somebody I'm sure in the audience will know. But I'd taken a friend of mine was visiting from Europe, from England, and I took him to see The Matrix. So it was my first time seeing it too, and he hated The Matrix. He was like, "Oh, they ripped off." It was something from 2000 AD. He's like, "That story is the same storyline that was blah blah blah." I'm like, I walked out and my jaw was still hanging out. This guy, he just like spoiled it all for me. He just like ranted and raved in a British accent for like an hour until I finally like dropped him off at his hotel. He just hated it. So it was disappointing, but I still love them. Still love it to this day. But I remember that a good friend of mine, Potemkin.
There are 2 good comments on there. One is Dave Rash says he bought from me a Legion Lost cover in 2000, and it already scrolled up past where I can say, hang on. In 2000, you say, in 2007. I was just on your CAF yesterday looking at that cover going, man, when's Dave going to sell me at least one piece? Dave has like 300 Legion Lost pages or something like that. And that's one of my other favorite stories of the 2000s. That was an amazing book. But Dave, I'm glad you still have it. I really enjoy it in your gallery. And Rich Cirilla says, from this day forward, Bill becomes Ben's biggest competitor for Planetary art.
It could happen. I've owned like 6 pieces of Cassaday artwork over the years, X-Men related typically, but sold them all. But he is one person who I've been wanting to get into my collection. I get a good example of his work. And
I'll tell Rich it's not true. In fact, Simon will know this because I did not bid on the piece that Simon just won in Heritage, which is the main lady kicking a car and all the guys flying out of the car because she just drop kicked it. And I thought heavily about bidding on it. But what Simon doesn't know is that I passed on that piece in a trade deal. Somebody bought from me my Jay Lee Wildcats trilogy cover. And at the time I needed cash and I wasn't happy with his valuation on the Planetary piece. So I didn't take it. So Sai, you'll be happy I didn't take that piece now that it's sitting in your collection.
Well, that's good. That worked out well then.
Yeah.
You'll see. Phil mentions Ben, your Wolverine 68 pages killer.
I wish I still had that Wolverine 68 page is killer. That's one of those where I bought it for $1,000 and I put it up on Comic Art Live actually. Oh. And Dino bought it from me. And I think so. Dino bought it from me, and I think he might have sold it on, or maybe he still has it for sale. But it's no longer in my collection. Although Tex Wolverine is still still on my list of things that I would like to have a cover from.
Well, that's so. How was Comic Art Live for you? I mean, I think did you exhibit in the first one?
I've exhibited in all of them, I think.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure because I remember I was looking back at old emails. I
Right.
was pretty sure you were asking questions about the very first one. So that's cool.
Yeah.
So it's been all right. Worked okay for you.
Yeah, it has. It's I like in person more than online, but
Mhm.
it's worked out great. It's been a great venue and a welcome venue to sell things that might be time to move out of my collection. Um, it's funny because I was talking with somebody recently about Dan and Joe's comic art conventions in New Jersey, and how did that work out? Well, it worked out great because I get to spend a whole day talking nothing but comic art with a community of friends of mine. And if I sell a piece, great. If I don't, also great. I got to spend a day talking comic art with people I know and enjoy. So
So are
those
there a
have
lot of it's funny because during the show I don't really have I do the panels and I'm also doing just putting out any fires that might be going on at the at that time. So do collectors chat a lot on the side? Like, hey, did you see that Dino put this piece up for sale? Or see, because I don't get to see any of that because I'm not on social media. I'm not paying attention to any thread, but that's cool. I'm glad to know that goes on. I don't think about it too much because I'm always just so focused on running the show that I don't get to think about what it's like as a buyer or a seller while it's going on and until it's over. And then it's like, boy, I missed out on a lot. So that's cool.
Yeah, it's really cool. Dino says that he still has the Tex Wolverine page. You're welcome, Dino. It's a great page. I loved it. I'm glad it's in your collection.
Yeah, Dino has a very enviable collection. He's always adding
his 10 for the year this year?
I was just gonna say that same thing on Facebook.
I'm ashamed. I'm not putting my 10 up because I just know.
When I saw it, I felt the same way. It's like, I picked up a few good pieces this year, but when you look at Dino's 10, it's like every one of those images is burned in your brain as just classic. From whatever I can't even remember what the titles were, but it's just like you look at that little collage and your head hurts. You're just like, how did one person collect all this amazing artwork in 1 year? But the thing is, the great thing is, and with the way the art market has been, it's brought out some of the greatest artworks. And since the pandemic started, I think we've had a deluge of just amazing artwork coming out there. Because the prices are good, and it's like you gotta. So it's a good time to be a buyer and a seller at the end of the day. I mean, a buyer, you're paying more, but you're getting some amazing pieces.
There was a whole slew of the 2000s where 90s art was available, but not like it's available now. There's right. Like a Jim Lee Deathblow cover. I didn't see a Jim Lee Deathblow cover until those auctions. Right? They just were not there. They were sitting somewhere and not anywhere where we could see them. And now here they are at won an auction. Wow. And they're 70,000 and they're 100,000. And oh my gosh, wow.
I know it's again, like with those two George Perez covers in the last Heritage Signature auction. I followed George's market a bit. I'm not a buyer or anything, but I was impressed with that one that went over to. It was just that wasn't what I was expecting. I was thinking, well, if they both end up 150, 180, that's probably good, right? But even then, that's a crazy number to say, right? Because 5-6 years ago we might have been saying 35, 45. Maybe we might have been saying that, and now we're saying 150 or 160 as that's commonplace. But still, the market still still is very surprising. I think that's true. But again, great to see these pieces coming to market. That's what I was trying to really get at. I think we've almost had too much good artwork to look at the last few years. But let's keep looking at some artwork here because I know the next piece is a Bart Sears, I believe, right?
Yes, this one I've had for a very long time. I think it might have been one of my earliest cover purchases. I read Eclipso, The Darkness Within, and I just loved the artwork, but I wasn't drawn to the story. It was just an okay story. But finding a cover, and I've been looking for covers. I own several splashes from this series, a double page, and then 2 or 3 other splashes, and this cover. And I've just never, and I've owned like 30 of the interior pages over the course of time, but I've never found another cover. And this is the only one, and it's just stunning. Bart's art is just incredible.
Yeah, no, I've always appreciated Bart's art. He's just been amazing as far as I'm concerned. I've loved all his work. I loved when he got to do so much work for Wizard. I mean, he's just somebody whose art style I've just always really enjoyed. And I can honestly say, though, Eclipso I'm not familiar with, but aside from that, though, I mean, this is a gorgeous piece of art.
Right.
Oh, and thank you, number one Marvel fan. Here's a few bucks for the omnibus fund. All right, well, I think you just paid for half of it, number one Marvel fan. I'm gonna buy it. Listen, guys, I'm gonna buy it tonight. I will pick up a copy of it, and I'll have it to read on my trip back to Ohio to see my mom for Christmas.
So Fish said, I think that he's saying that it doesn't happen. That's why live is better. Live is better because online doesn't have as much, but that doesn't mean that it's not happening. I mean, buddies of mine we're talking on Messenger, and we're discussing what's happening and what things are selling for. And can you believe that somebody put a piece? I mean, I put a piece up in a couple CALs of ways ago, and I put it up for $100,000, and people were like, what's the price of that? Can you possibly believe it? So there is discussion happening around it. It's not as what's that?
I would say that was funny. I remember when you did that, and I remember that I don't know where I saw the conversation, but somebody was like, does he really think he's going to be able to get that kind of money?
I think it was Michael Browning, and I think he and I discussed it online also, but I didn't think I could actually get that, but if somebody was willing to pay that, I'm willing to take it.
Why not, right? Exactly. Right? There's nothing wrong with that. I mean, how is that any different than what dealers do every day, right? I mean, and during Comic Art Live, dealers put pieces on there with a high price tag, and I mean, if it sparks a conversation, I mean, that's kind of what it's all about, right? Just a couple emails and an offer. Right. We take this, and they might have something in trade. I mean, trades have been a big. I have never traded for one deal, not ever, but I think trades have been a boon, or have always been a boon to the hobby. Just people easily it's tough to value artwork. I think it sounds like you've done a few trade deals in the past, right, Ben?
Yeah, I have. I've quite a bit of my collection has gone through trading. In fact, right before COVID, I sold my Jim Lee X-Men cover that I got by trading almost all of my plat to Bashara. He had a Jim Lee X-Men cover, and I had always I would consider that a grail, and I felt that I was in small company owning a Jim Lee X-Men cover, and I owned it for a couple of years, and then when it was time to pull that money out into other things, I sold it just shy of the explosion.
All right. So what, in 2019, around there, 2018? Yeah.
It was 2019 or late 2018, or like maybe it was January of 2019.
I mean, I thought the exact opposite was going to happen when the pandemic started, but it didn't. All it did was fuel everybody's desire to own our work, and because they weren't traveling and spending money in all these other places, it just allowed people to pour more money into their collections than ever before. I mean, it costs a lot of money to take a family of four to Disney, right? Well, when you didn't have to, that was an extra, $15,000-$20,000 you had to spend on a piece of original art. So
yeah, but it doesn't explain a Jim Lee cover going for $380,000, or a McFarlane going for $600, or Dave Cockrum's giant size X-Men or the first appearance of Wolverine for $750,000 or whatever it was. That's, I agree. Pandemic, no pandemic. If that piece came up, they're gonna arrive at the crazy numbers.
Well,
Josh Flanders said, Ben, great collection. Thank you very much. I appreciate that, Josh.
Yeah, and I think I linked. Did I link to I must have linked your CAF Gallery in the description. I was going to actually post that in case I hadn't, but here, let me throw it in the chat, and that'll actually get it over to Facebook too if people aren't paying attention there. But yeah, see, it's GCAT 73.
Yeah,
very early one. So, all right. Well, now I think the next piece is the one that's right behind you. So I made two slides for this one because I did this, and it's like, boy, it just doesn't show off all the detail. So I did make a more just so people could see how crazy the detail is on this piece. But but we already got the backstory on this. But I mean, this thing has to be so impressive in person.
It's huge. It's enormous. I think it's like 22 inches wide by like or maybe 27 inches wide by like 33 or 34 inches tall. It's on 3 boards, and it's gorgeous. In my humble opinion, it's the best Joe Quesada's ever done, and Jimmy Palmiotti, the two of them. You know, they've done X-Men stuff, and they've done Wolverine, and they've done Daredevil, but I mean, this is 9 covers, and it's enormous, and it's beautiful.
Yeah, the thing is just crazy. If I'm ever in your neck of the woods, I'd love to see it in person, because yeah, this
Absolutely.
thing is just. I mean, I've just never seen anything quite like it. I mean, you've seen large art and whatnot, but the amount of detail and everything that they've piled into this thing is just unbelievable.
I mean, I remember collecting the alternative covers when I was young. Like, you know, I remember reading previews and being like, okay, there's going to be an alternate cover to this. I have to remember to tell Jim and Jack that I want that alternative cover. Right? That like when it arrives, I know it's going to be 1 of 10 or 1 of 20. I want them to put that in my pull bin. And I remember collecting those, and then it became a poster. And years later, Liefeld and I discussed me sending him scans or whatever to make a big print of it, but nothing ever came of it. Unfortunately, I would love to, maybe because he lost the rights to some of the characters or something like that. But I would love for this to be out there in the world again.
Yeah, it's just absolutely stunning. And the backstory, Brett, it was just more about how you acquired it, Ben, just by being diligent.
So Brett, yeah, the backstory from this piece itself is it is 9 alternative covers to Rob Liefeld's Extreme Universe from 90. I don't know. When did he start? He started Image in 92 or 90, right. So maybe it was 94, 93, 94, in that range of time. And each one of these is, so that's a cover, that's a cover, that's a cover, that's a cover, cover. And they're all covers, alternative covers. So you had to, in order to get all 9, you had to collect the alternative covers back in the day. And they were hard to find, some of them. And how I got it, Brett, was that I bugged Castra for a long time. And finally he was like, all right, Ben, it's better off in your collection. And he was right, because it's been in my collection for almost 20 years.
And it's not going anywhere.
Not yet.
Let's see, what does Mike say? I'm remembering they did this alternative huge connecting covers with Quesada and also Portasio.
Yeah, and the Portasio one, which was the Wildstorm universe version of this, I owned that too at one point. And then, unfortunately for me, somebody made me an offer I couldn't refuse.
The story of all our lives, unfortunately.
Yeah, and if he would be willing to sell it back to me, I would buy it back.
Yeah.
For whatever reason, he's still enjoying it. So what can I say? He still loves it. So he keeps saying no, and I keep saying okay. I tried to trade the Jim Lee X-Men cover for it, and he did not want it. So, well, he liked that better.
That's how it goes. But I get it. I understand that's just how it is. I mean, there could come a time when they feel like that's that something might change and they could let it go.
Yeah, hope so.
But I will have. Did you see? More likely
it'll be on Heritage.
Right. Well, at this, today, I mean, that's kind of why not, right? It's like let's see. Can it depending on how they promote it, and whether it gets on their on the platinum auction and that sort of thing, and gets out there early, and they do a lot of PR for you. You just never know where it's going to go.
Dave says, unfortunately for me too, about the Wildstorm by Portasio, because I know he wanted those badly. And did I even ask you, Dave, if you could handle it at the time? But I know that it was a time where he and I were both, not financially so wonderfully feeling great about things. And this guy made me a great offer. And I was like, oh, man.
Yeah, well, that's tough. But I will have Wills on the show in January. I'm not sure what day it is. I think it's the 3rd Tuesday in January. So I think that's the 17th. I've got him on for an interview, and I'm going to talk about this period. They actually said, so what do you want to talk to him about before we agree to put him on there? Because they're like, we don't want to talk about like this, that, and the other. And I'm like, well, I just want to talk about the 90s. I want to talk about what, why he's currently going back to Bishop and stuff. And they're like, all right, we'll talk to you. So I feel very lucky to actually be able to get him on the show and hang out with him for a couple hours. It won't be a sales show. It'll just be straight talking, comic art, and hopefully, in a weird way, I wouldn't, I probably should ask some people to send in a few pieces by Wills, to kind of like pick out, to have them talk about them. That might be kind of cool.
I still have those Wildstorm ones in my gallery if you want to use those.
Yeah, no, that's actually a pretty good idea. Why don't I do that? Because I just thought that'd be fun. I was trying to think of like how I would select stuff. I wasn't sure if I'd ask him for it, but I'll just take pieces from people in CAF who'd like me to show the artwork and then get him to talk about it. I like that idea. All right, well, cool. Let's move on to the next piece here. Scott
one
Clark.
of my favorites. It's actually on my wall right over there. This is the Stormwatch 6 cover by Scott Clark, who's unfortunately no longer with us. But again, Stormwatch was a 90s Jim Lee title that I fell in love with Scott's art. It was just dynamic and bold and explosive and jumping. I mean, look at this piece. It's jumping off the page, right? It's just enormous action and energy with the moon and the helicopter and the whole team coming at you. Just, it was so different than what seemed like the feeling more stagnant Marvel at the time. Yeah,
this is a really nice piece. I mean, I love the composition of it. I mean, it's really well done. It's another piece I'm sure looks amazing in person, and you've got it on the wall, so it's something that you get to look at every single day.
Yep, it is gorgeous. Gorgeous piece. One of the few that I have on the, it seems like what's behind me, like I've got a ton on the wall, but that's basically it. It's that and what's under the Extreme, and then the Stormwatch cover over there, and and the Ziggy that I have up here, and that's pretty much it.
Oh, you have a Ziggy up there too?
Yeah, in fact, Ziggy is one of the ones that my 20 years of collecting, I've only seen 2 Ziggies. And I lost out on the last one came recently in a heritage.
Yeah, I was going to say there was one that was recent.
Yeah. And I lost out on, I was like, wow, I need to own, if there's only 2 in the world, I need to own them both. And I missed out on that one for whatever reason. But I have one. It's very funny. It says, I left my troubles on my doorstep. Unfortunately, I forgot they were there and they tripped me on my way out. And he's sitting with a cast on his leg.
As only Ziggy can. That's awesome. Well, here we haven't seen any Travis artwork until now.
Nick didn't know that Scott passed away. He passed away a few years ago, I think. Yeah. In fact, we're hang on, let me ask Dave if I can say, Dave, can I tell about the book? Let's see if he answers that. Well, when he like 10 years ago, a long time ago. Wow, time is flying. Well, when Dave answers the question, I'll let Nick in on what's going on over there. But
he says, I guess, question mark.
Okay, so fans of Scott's are putting together a artifact edition that's only for the fans, not for resale, not for anything. But I think I donated maybe 50 scans of Scott's art that I have, and many other people are donating scans, and it's sort of like a tribute book to him, as well as but again, only we make no money off of it. It's only the price of the printing, and it's only for us, and it's not for resale, and you promise not to resell it. So just as a tribute to Scott, how much we enjoyed his artwork and how much we miss it.
That's great. It really is. That's awesome. It's going to be tough to keep him off the market, though, 10 years from now or something. But
I mean, listen, in 10 years, I don't know that they might care, but
right. No, I get it, but no, it's great. I haven't heard of anyone ever doing something like that. I think that's really admirable. I think you guys that's fantastic.
Yeah, and then we get to enjoy his art in an artist edition, basically.
Mm-hmm. Well, that's amazing. Ben,
and
that's awesome.
Nick, it's Nick says, "Wow, that's really nice, Ben and Dave." It's really Dave, really Brian Hartless and Gabe Abadilia and Dave. The 3 of them really make it happen. I'm really just hey guys, how's it going with that? And contributing scans, but they really make it happen and create they're really the driving force behind those things.
Well, kudos to all of you. That is a great idea. Now we can talk about the dress.
The Travis. So this one, like, remember how I mentioned that when I bought some Travis directly from him, he would send on a sketch or whatever. And this one, I bought 2 painted covers from him at the time, 2 or 3. Oh, I think it was 3 painted covers from him at the time, and it was expensive. This is in like 2002, and he asked me what my favorite character was that he drew, and I said, "How about a zealot?" And this is what he sent. And I was blown away then, and I'm blown away every time I look at it. It's just so pretty.
That is unbelievable. Yeah, I mean, that's the thing. It's back to the detail, his pen marks, everything about his style is just so. I mean, it's so Travis, right? I mean, every time you see something by him, you just know. And this period was so cool. I mean, I loved. He's one of those first guys I remember seeing doing pieces on tone paper, and he just had a really unique approach to everything, and that's a gorgeous piece. Now that one has like 1,400 views on it, so you know where people's interests lie. Travis is one of our top search terms on the site, so yeah, that makes a whole lot of sense.
I might contribute to that. So I search for him like every day.
Now I know. Now I get it. But yeah, no, that's awesome. And again, I mean, yeah, you spent some money with him, but you got something cool in return too. That's great. And now we got another what we got here, a Wildcats piece, right? Yeah. By Travis.
This is Wildcats Volume 2, Issue 2, page 22. The end page. After the whole caper has unfolded and been resolved, the 2 in the car go back to their lives, basically, after having been abducted to try and find a cure for something. And, I mean, the dragon on her arm. He drew the dragon on her arm. It wasn't computer generated. He drew the dragon on her arm, her hair, the smoke, and the car. Rich was telling me that Rich friend who inked this, was telling me that the car Travis did by hand. No reference, no like, put down a circle and drew a circle around it. Like, he did it all by hand. And it's just, I mean, I wish his signature wasn't in it because I don't like that so much, but it's still unbelievable.
Yeah, that's, I mean, like you say, I mean, look at the smoke. I mean, everything. It's just crazy how much detail he packed into these things, right. and the way he drew a face. I mean, I wish I could. I can't zoom in on this here, but it's just the amount of detail that he was putting into these pieces was just mind-numbing. But yeah, you're right. We always talk about the poor placement of signatures sometimes on the art, right? I mean, it always drives you crazy. It's like, oh, put it in the margins. Why? There should be a rule, that every artist knows, or every writer or whoever, that you're trying to get to sign something. Don't sign it in the panels. Sign it.
How many have come up recently in Heritage and Comic Link and various things where Stan Lee has signed something on the page, and you're like,
oh, we talk about that all the time.
What?
That's a running. It's basically a running joke around here. It doesn't have a Stan Lee signature on it. Another J. Scott Campbell that doesn't come up with a Stan Lee sig or something on it. But I know. But John Byrne, I mean, he was notorious for signing in the panels, right? I mean, if you pull and again, it's just, I don't know what they were thinking, right? To put it on the outside anywhere. Don't do it on the art.
Nick says no one signs where Stan Lee signs. Yeah. I mean, ridiculous.
Right. He would sign right in the star on Cap's shield if he could. So it's true. I mean, he would sign on a thigh. If there was a white space open, yeah, he would do it. So
Rich said someone asked Travis why his style changed so much from his early career, and he replied, "Because I learned how to draw." He said so matter-of-factly.
Hey, that's good. That's very straightforward. Matter of fact, yeah, I figured out how to draw.
One of the things I forgot to say on that last piece is that you have to credit Rich Friend for his ability to go over Travis and make it look even prettier. I mean, he and Travis were just like Jim and Scott were just so good together. I
agree. Yeah, Rich is he's a really cool guy. Very interesting to talk with. We've talked about having him on the show because that's I think he's been involved with many great projects, many great artists, And yeah, that just reminds me, because the last time we talked was at San Diego, and I almost never follow up with him, but he's somebody I really, and he was around in the Comic Ardell a
Oh yeah,
bit, you know,
yeah.
in the early days too. I mean, I remember he and Tim. That's why I thought it was so cool, right? At that point in time, you know, you had artists that were interacting with you at an early stage. For me, collecting, it was like, wow, if Tim Townsend's collecting art, if Richard Friend's collecting art, and they're making art, they must know this is pretty cool, right? Because why would artists, you know, be big collectors like these guys? And yeah, all right, I gotta get Richard on. I should try to even heck, Tim lives near, you know, not too far from me now that I'm down in Florida. I should actually try to get him to come on the show sometime too.
Yeah, Tim's a really cool cat. He actually at MegaCon in 2001 took me to meet Dave Mandel when he had convinced Dave Mandel to bring 4 or 5 Travis painted covers, a New Horizons cover, a Danger Girl cover, Wildcats X-Men cover, and they were all there on the table in person, right? And of course, I'm drooling over these covers. They're just that absolutely stunningly gorgeous, right? And Dave Mandel has no idea who I am, but Tim was so kind. Like, you know, he was like, "Hey Ben, come with me. I'm meeting Dave. Come take a look at some awesome Travis art. I know you love this stuff." So he was just so much fun to and always has been so much fun to interact with and to get to know and to be a fanboy with, as well as, and you know, he was printing money at the time, you know, inking all of these great stuff.
I mean, he was he was inking a lot of cool. He inked Frank Whiteley even on those early New X-Men books. I mean, he got to touch a lot of cool artwork, man.
Right.
I mean,
Art Adams on Authority.
Right. Dang it. Yeah, the more you Now Tim, I hadn't seen him in a long time, and I saw him at MegaCon last year. So so yeah, same happy-go-lucky, you know, tall. I mean, you know, he's like he's a giant of a guy, but he was an amazing collector back in the day. I think he's slowed down a bit on his collecting side of things, but he'd be cool to get on the show too, just to kind of talk about the glory days of the Comic Ardell, and we can revel in his sniping and the other things that he did to pick up some amazing pieces.
But he got amazing stuff. He got some Mignola, I remember, like a painted Mignola covers, and just absolutely stunning stuff. I would always be like, wow, that stuff is gorgeous. Gorgeous. Dave says Rich Friend has his own Blaster Kid comic coming soon, and his art is next level. That was true. And in fact, last time I talked to Rich, I was like, Rich, I want to buy some of your art. He's like, no, this I'm keeping. This is for me. And I was like, all right, but when you're ready.
I'm your man.
Yeah, and his stuff looks so gorgeous now. I mean, you know, just amazing. Really next level. Dave's right.
Nope, I completely agree.
But I said to him on the phone the other day, I go, but Rich, I don't buy comics anymore.
You're going to have to.
He's like, well, maybe. I'm like, all right, I'll buy yours. I mean, give me a hardcover.
So here we have a Spawn and Chapel pinup.
Yeah.
By Calvin Irving and Danny Mickey, another great inker.
So this is one of my I just enjoy the artwork style. Like, I think Calvin Irving's style was so different and so unique. At the time, I was like, wow. And there's so much energy in this piece. Like, look at Spawn's cape flying all over the place. And you're like, wow, they're just ready for battle. And I just loved it. And you know, like, you know, we complain about pricing these days, and the Spawn Chapel cover in Comic Link just went for $4,200, and Dave and I bemoaned the fact that Dave owned it, sold it, it went for too much, kept going for too much, and now it's even more. But this piece cost me, I think, $200 recently. So, like, you know, there's great art still to be found at reasonable prices.
No, that's true. I mean, well, we've talked about it a bit, where we just say that, you know, you don't always have to go after the high, you know, the priciest stuff. You know, if you want to get a John Buscema, you can always go buy one of his horror pages, and you'll still get it for maybe $500 because nobody really wants that stuff. But it's beautiful, and if you're looking for it, you want to get a good example or a starter piece for certain artists. There is stuff you can afford out there. It's the high profile stuff gets all the news and makes everybody think that that's really where you know, where all art is, but it's not true. I mean, there is a lot of deals to be had. I mean, I think that, even in the last Heritage Signature auction, I think there were some pieces that I wouldn't say they underperformed, but they went for a little less than I thought. So you just never know. I mean, you got to catch the right set of buyers, you know, at the right time or whatnot. But yeah, no, but that's a good pickup.
I agree. I wouldn't mind if the auctions weren't coming one after the other, like every couple of weeks. It's like, man, my pocketbook can't keep up with any of that.
I know. It's like, and we do the dueling dealers, and I do other sales shows with artists, and it's always like, there's just always something. You're always competing. Everybody's competing with each other, and it's weird how some of the auction houses almost will all fall in the same week. You'll get a Hakes, a Comic Link, and a Heritage all in the same week. I mean, you would think that the hobby can't sustain that, and somehow it still is. But I'm sure that there's got to be people getting into a little bit in over their heads. I mean, you can't keep these paces up, and not all of us can anyway. I mean, but I agree. I wish there was a way that we could universally just have one a week. It would be better than the way some of these things have fallen. But
somebody in the chat earlier said it's a bubble, it's going to burst, and I'm like, please burst, please, then I can buy what I like again.
Yeah, no, I agree. I mean, I don't think it is going to burst, but I know. I think that there's a lot of wishful thinking out there. I mean, at the end of the day, it would benefit everybody. I mean, we'd be able to buy more artwork, but that would mean the bubble wouldn't stay burst, for very long. I think, because if we all went out there buying again, it would just swing everything back the way it was. So yeah, Dan Lawless mentions that Richard Friend's good study, and his art has never been better. So that's true, Dan. Absolutely true, and you would know as an artist yourself. Okay, so let's swing over. Where was the next piece? Oh, right here. It was the Brian Hitch Authority piece.
Yeah, Brian Hitch Authority is something I've owned a lot over the years. In fact, I think Mikhail owns a cover that I used to own. Again, like Planetary, Authority was one of those stories that just hit you like a ton of bricks and is just so good. And I have the Absolute Edition over there and the Omnibus over here, and it's just outstanding. It was just like, wow, that's so different and so unique and so explosive and filled with energy. And for a changing world now, they're superheroes changing the world, and it was fantastic. I'd never seen anybody punch a guy's head off in a comic book, and have it all like drawn in intricate detail by Brian.
Well, I can tell you, I did read Authority, so
yeah. So you know what I'm talking about.
Oh, of course, absolutely. No, I thought Hitch did a great job. I mean, and Neary's a great inker of Brian's work. So I mean, together, it's just a great team, and they go so well together.
They really do. They really do. And then followed by Quitely, who is amazing.
True. I've never owned. I do have a Quitely Authority page, but I've never had a Hitch. So I mean, I know that they don't come up as often as I'd like, but yeah, I was happy to at least get one Quitely from Authority. Probably the only one I get, but yeah, still really. I mean, I love that series.
Yeah, me too. Just stunning. So this one, let me readjust.
So this is the one that's behind.
Yeah. So
wait a minute. I just watched. I can see you in the little tiny screen there. What did you just do? How did you have those artworks?
They were just sitting one on top of each other.
They were not.
Yeah, they
were. And they never fell over.
They didn't fall over.
That's just. Nobody else could see that, but Ben literally turned around, grabbed the top third of it, pulled it away, then grabbed the second one, and then moved it down. And I was like, how is he doing that? I mean, I was like, you had some magical way of keeping that there. So they were literally just leaning up against that. Are they in like top loaders?
There's no top loader big enough to fit those. I have this huge like a comic bag, but it's like massive. It's like, it's really big. It's like 25 inches wide or whatever. And it just folds up around them.
Okay. Well, I was dumbfounded. I wish I wouldn't have pulled that slide up, because I would have liked everybody to see you do that. But here, let me show the slide for this artwork that was hiding behind that one. So tell me about this one, because I'm not familiar with the artist. Okay,
so Mike asks, is that Nick Monabot? And yes, it is. So Nick was one of those 90s artists that, there was a wave of like, hey, you want to come work for Extreme, come work for Wildstorm, come work for Homage, come work for Top Cow. They did an artist search thing, and Nick showed up at, it was Wildstorm, and his art was, I mean, as far as unique artwork goes, his was unique, dark, disturbing, haunting, lovely, lush, And he, unfortunately, like, I think, Dave knows more because he did a bunch of research, but I think he died at 25 from cancer, I think.
Oh, wow.
And so he had maybe made 100 pieces in his whole life, his whole career, in published work or even semi-published, like prelims and stuff like that. And somebody, I think it's Nick Salacito, I think that's his name. He did a whole bunch of leukemia. Mike says, okay. So 23, wow, young. He found the family in the Philippines, I think, and got whatever they were willing to part with at the time, I think. And then after the big flood, they have not been able to get in touch with them. So this was a piece that Nick sold me several years later, and it is enormous. It's a double-page spread that was from, I think, Wildstorm pinup book, maybe Art of Homage, or one of those pinup books that Jim Lee did at the time. And it's Mother One, which is from Wetworks, and it's stunning. It's absolutely gorgeous. And it's as far as unique goes, it's even more than unique because Jim Lee's done thousands of pieces. Rob Liefeld's done thousands. Nick has done 100 or less. And I feel really privileged and blessed to actually own a piece of his art, since he was just my jaw dropped when I was a kid looking at his stuff.
No, the detail on this thing is amazing. I mean, it's you know what, you are premium. You could put a nicer scan out there, but you got a frame now. I mean, so
he came in a frame.
Oh, it came in a frame.
Yeah, and I've been loath to take it out of the frame.
Dang. Well, I wouldn't do it then. If that's the way you picked it up, I wouldn't take it out of the frame at all. But
you can see. I mean, this is how big it is.
Dang. So you usually have it up on the wall?
Yeah, it actually sits right where the computer is. So
you look at it every single day. Wow.
Yeah, every day on the wall. And it's one of my favorites. And actually, as always, Dave helped me get it. And Dave and Nick knew that I'd wanted it for years and years, and they helped me get it when Nick was ready to sell. Dave said it's from the Wetworks source book. And Mike says that he never realized his art was out there. His art really isn't out there. There's, I think Dave has several pieces, and I have one, and a few other people have a couple, and that's it. There's no more.
Yeah, I was just looking on CAF, and there's 40 pieces, but I can't tell. Some of it's colorist work because Chodo apparently did the.
I think Dave has all the Ibernary color guides, I think.
Yep. Yeah, that's what it looks like. But so yeah, I wouldn't say 40. There's probably only 30 pieces of art that he touched on CAF. So yeah, not a lot. Wow. No, that's impressive. And I'm glad you own it. I mean, it's I feel
really good about it.
Yeah, I don't blame you. Let's see, next piece.
So this is a Jim Balint Catwoman. Do you want to call it a splash, a semi-splash? I mean, she's flying off the page. And I didn't read Catwoman ever, but I love Jim's art. I mean, he draws an unbelievable Catwoman.
Yeah, no, I've always loved Jim's work as well, and I'd call this. I mean, it's a splash at the end of the day for me. I mean, I think anytime when you have an image, when an artist does a layout like this, where they're really using that dark shape of behind the two panels to be a part of the lower one, to me that's a splash page. You can't, and you don't even have to call it a semi splash or anything. It's a splash page,
and it was just stunning. So I think I put a bid in on it and I won it, and I'm like, okay, great. But every time I have a Balint, I sell it, and then I'll buy another one, and then I sell it, then I buy another one. Thanks, Nick. Thanks, guys. Yeah, it really is. It's a stunning piece. And usually it sits on the wall right below all of these. Is it still there? Right below these, which actually my kids turned me on to. These CGC collection boxes.
Oh,
but
those
it's
over
usually
there,
on
yeah.
the wall right behind them.
But no, that's gorgeous. I've always liked Jim's work a lot too. So, but you don't see too much on the market too often, right? I mean,
No.
it's just
I
never
don't
out
think
there.
I don't think he sells his artwork. I think he only if an inker inked it, then if whatever they got might go out into the market, but I don't think he sells. I don't think he sold any of that artwork.
Yeah, Nick says don't sell it. It's irreplaceable. I would agree. I definitely would agree with Nick on that one. Okay, a little change of pace here on a Brian Bolland.
So the story behind, well, it's the Wonder Woman poster, as we all have seen over
Right.
collecting careers. It's the prelim, one of the prelims for it. And the way I got this piece is, I think maybe if Joseph is on, he can tell if he remembers. Joseph Melchior and I used to do a lot of, like, he would send stuff to my house and I would ship it out for him after he sold it. And as a thank you for a deal, one of the deals of those things that we did, he gave me this piece.
Oh, nice.
So it's one of those pieces that's in the like gift from friends folder, like that Travis, that will never go anywhere.
Do you have a portfolio that is all gifts from friends?
I mean, I think I have maybe 5 or 6. I've got 1 or 2, maybe 5 from Travis, and then I've got this one, and then Nick's has given me a couple pieces over the years, and then there's been 1 or 2 things that I used to buy. In 2001, I got turned on to Jimmy Chung on Scion, and Jeff says he has that poster. I got turned on to Jimmy Chung on Scion, and when I was at MegaCon that year, he and Don Hillsman were there, and I was like, guys, I want to buy all your covers that you produce. And they were like, okay. And so Bill, $400 a cover at the time, which was a ton for me at the time. Right. But every month I sent them a check, either one or the other, a check for $400, and they sent me the covers. And Don sent me Nightcrawler doing some kind of acrobatics as a gift, and Jimmy sent me something. And so those things I have as my, like, enjoyment of this hobby and friendship.
Yeah, well, I just think it's cool because I've gotten a few gifts here and there. I mean, like Bob Layton gave me something early on, because early in the CAF days, because he was always advertising to get commissions, right? And I guess he was doing really well. So like I went to a show one time and he's like, I think he might have been the first person to give me a piece of art. He's like, Bill, I can't tell you how great it's been, how many commissions I've gotten. And I did this for you because I think he knew I was going to be there. And I was like, he had already signed it to Bill and everything. So I was like, damn, that's amazing. But it makes me think that actually is a cool idea, because I probably have maybe a dozen things that I've gotten, as gifts. It'd be cool to kind of put something like that, do a flip, do one of those flips or something of all the artwork that I've been gifted. I like that idea. Because one of my tasks for 2023 is to organize my artwork better, because I've never really had I would just get something, I'd throw it in a portfolio. I think I might have had one X-Men portfolio of mostly unpublished stuff. But other than that, I would always just throw it in an Itoya and not really think about it. And I've gotten to the point where it's just a mess. I don't know where anything is. I'm opening stuff up and I'm not finding it. I feel like I've lost something, and then I'll find it again, a year later, because I didn't know where I'd put it.
I think we collect in the same manner.
So I need to. So what I decided, like, as soon as we get past the new year, I'm going to break out all the portfolios and the ones, and it'll be like probably 10 that have artwork just completely with no rhyme or reason for them. I'm going to pull them all out. I'm going to figure out what that rhyme and reason is, right? Maybe it's all 80s pieces in one. I like the idea of the gifts in another. And then I'm just going to work it out like that. But yeah, it's something to think about, as collectors, because as we like to accumulate stuff, if you're not putting in, that forethought into how you're organizing things, it can get pretty ugly.
But we're collectors, not organizers.
That is true. That is very true. But Joseph is a great guy. I know Nick mentioned it too. He's he and I, I don't think I ever bought anything from Joe, but it's fun. I mean, I think I saw him 4 times in this last year. It was like every show I went to, there's Joseph. How is that possible? It was like, he has to come over from the UK to visit, but it was like, every show he was there. Yeah.
One of my fondest collecting memories is going to something in New Jersey. It wasn't one of the comic art shows because it hadn't happened yet. And I went out with Cy and with Joe and with somebody else and with Ruben. And we just went out for drinks. Like Joseph was in town. I'm like, yeah, I'm coming down.
Yeah.
And out we went, and it was just so much fun. We just talking art and talking life and enjoying the hobby together.
Yeah, no, Joseph's he's a very interesting guy, and he's definitely, I mean, he's got Brit Comics art, but yeah, I mean, he's somebody I always enjoy hanging out with at shows.
And at Dave's like this now, but he was like, if I wanted to find something, I would be like, all right, Joseph, go find this. And he would, and invariably he would either find it or have heard about it or know where somebody might be. And he would find everything. He would, and whatever thing he turned his collecting gaze to, be it Travis or Boland, he would find it and go get it if he could.
No,
so it was always fun to be on his coattails, being like, all right, what'd you find this time? Oh, do I want a Boland Animal cover? Yeah, I'll take one of those.
Oh man. All right, we'll move on from that. But yeah, I always appreciate that because he has a lot of those ball and prelims. You know, whenever he does an art drop, it seems like there's always one new one that he kind of pulls out. So I'm always paying attention because one of these days I'm going to pull the trigger on him. Let's see. So Lionel Yu, you know, this is a really, really nice piece. It's I feel like it's weird. I remember when these were coming out, I think I had owned some Lionel Yu pieces as well. And for some reason, when I saw this one, I thought, did I ever own this one? I feel like I had, but I don't know.
I don't actually remember where I got this, if it was eBay or a trade or a private sale. I don't remember where I got it originally, but I did, as in this hobby, you know, develops a good friendship in David Overstreet. Mm-hmm. Dave used to be big into Liefeld, and when he got married, I sent him this piece as a gift for his wedding.
Oh man, nice.
Yeah. And he many years treasured it, and many years later he said, I'm thinking about selling this piece. Do you mind? I said, no, but why don't you sell it back to me? And he said, okay. So I bought it back from him, and I've had it ever since. It's just, I think this is the best X-Men you ever did. And I love having it. It's just, again, dynamic and full of energy, and the whole team staring at you, and Rogue is outstanding, and Colossus is menacing, and Nightcrawler in the front, and then boom, jumping into action right below it. Just a fabulous piece.
Yeah, no, this thing is it's gorgeous. When I loved his work when he was doing everything on X-Men. I know I owned a couple pages, and when I saw this, I was like, boy, I really need to get another Lionel Yu and back in my collection, because just seeing this piece just makes me want to get one. I mean, I don't know who the inker would have been on this piece, but man, Lionel was just doing some great work on that one.
Mark Morales?
I think, well, Morales, there were a few. I think there were a few people inking him back then. I'll have to pull up one of the sites I used to try to look at that kind of stuff. But yeah, this is such a great example of Lionel's work there. I know.
Or maybe Dexter Vines. It might have been Vines.
You know, I think like the couple pages I got were from Dexter. And I don't know who was repping him back in the day, but I think I got it through an agent or something. But still, anyway, that I don't own anything by Lionel now, and that needs to be corrected after seeing that piece. Yeah, I loved his stuff.
My wife's favorite piece.
Yeah, well, you got it. I'm glad you included it.
Yeah, it's also one of my favorites. I love Bone. I mean, Bone has just really tickled my fancy over the years, so much so that I'm actually looking diagonally down to the right, and there's the Bone all-inclusive, you know, every issue in its leather-bound version that there was only 100 of way back when, and there's a reading copy in a slipcase right next to it, and there are four trade paperbacks, and above it is something else that I kickstarted that Jeff Smith did. He tickled, but for whatever reason, he tickled my funny bone. And when Rose came out, just really not an introduction to Vest, but more like hey, he's doing something you love. And I loved the book, and I was really gung-ho, you know, whatever it was, 15, 18 years ago, to go find a page. And even then, you know, I had to get this page, cost me then $600 or $700, I think. Mm-hmm. So it was not inexpensive, and it definitely broke my budget for whatever that time period was. But every time I think about selling it, my wife says, "But I love it." I said, "Okay, no problem. Keep it on the wall."
How could you even think about selling it?
Well, right. Have you seen the prices of them
I
recently?
know. I know.
Wow. I'm like, what? Really? I mean, the last two that sold on a weekday Heritage were $10,000 and $9,000.
Right.
And mine is better than any of those.
I get it.
I mean, of course, I'm opinionated and biased on it, but and one was the reveal of the Lord of the Locusts, but still, the
Mhm.
other one was just a page of two girls talking to each other. I've got Mim the dragon circling the world. I feel pretty happy to
Yeah.
be the
Well,
steward of
but
this
again,
one.
your wife, that's the one piece that she loves the most. You
Right.
cannot.
I show her Travis or this or Manabat or these, and she's like, "But that vest, real that vest, that
That's
vest is
the
something else."
one. When I in August we went to the to Columbus to see the Marvel exhibit, and we also went to that Billy Ireland museum there, and it was amazing because we got to see, because Jeff Smith donated it all, I don't know if it's all or as much of the bone
Yeah.
artwork to that museum. It was unbelievable because I'd never seen. I've seen a ton of his sketches he's done at cons and those sorts of things, but to see so much of his work in person from bone was just unbelievable. I mean, it was impressive. If you ever get a chance to get over to that museum, because they're awesome. You literally can tell them exactly what you want, and they'll pull it out. I mean, they love guys like us showing up, because they're like, we don't show up too often. So when you go in there and say, I'd love to see 100 pages of bone art, they'll bring it out for you.
Well,
And yeah, they will. It was, it was unbelievable. But and we're happy to do it. I mean, so it's like, if you ever get to go to Columbus for anything, work related, make sure you spend one extra day. It's got to be during the week though. They're not open on the weekends. So you have to go there Monday through Friday. But man, it was a trip to be able to see that, and the Calvin and Hobbes they had there.
oh yeah.
So being able to just see both of the, works by both of those artists was pretty incredible.
Well, the reason this set of CGC cases is here is because, for whatever reason, Heritage has been auctioning off 9.8 copy CGC versions of Bone, and I can't resist.
It's a weakness of yours.
I mean, it's Bone. It's just so good, so good.
It is.
And 9.8 copies, I'll take that in a heartbeat. Fine, no problem. They'll stack up right here. They look. In fact, I have 4 of them on my daughter's wall in frames. She loves Bone so much she rereads them all the time. I put them on her wall.
Oh, that's awesome, man. Yeah, Bone was fantastic. And it's funny. I've never introduced my family to it. I don't think they know anything about it. And you've clearly done a really good job of that. So I'm gonna have to, maybe I'll buy something for Christmas for everybody. That's a good idea.
Somebody give Bill $50. He can buy the all Bone edition.
There you go. All right, got to make another note of that. That would be one. There's other creators whose stuff I've introduced them to do but not that. That was a mistake. Let's see here. Okay, so Brett Booth, Deathblow pin up here with inks by Vey. I mean, what's not to love? I love Brett Booth.
Brett Booth is. I don't understand why Brett's art is not valued the same as Jim Lee's. Probably, and I think Dave and I were talking about this the other day, probably because he didn't do X-Men for a year, I think, or Batman for a year. I think that's the only reason. But just look at this.
Yeah, I have always been amazed at the detail, and everybody who's inked him really just got him. I mean, they just do such a fantastic job. But yeah, this is an amazing piece.
I actually was. This was part of the trade that I traded Bashara for that Jim Lee X-Men cover, and I regretted it instantly. I traded him plat covers that I didn't regret as much as this. And I went and when I finally had some more funds, when I sold the Jim Lee X-Men cover, I went back to Bashara and I was like, "Do you still have this piece?" And he's like, "I do." And here's how much you valued it for. And then my jaw dropped, and I said, "Okay, I'll pay you that. I'll pay you that much." And I bought it back. But I'm really glad I did, because I think it's his best piece.
Yeah, it is. It's stunning. I mean, yeah. This is the kind of stuff you want to see in person, because scans just never do a piece like this justice, because there's so much great detail in it. I mean, I'm looking at your. I'm actually looking at the piece on your CAF gallery, and even here, it's like, damn it, I wish I could just
make it any bigger.
Yeah, exactly. It's like it's not like on Heritage where I can scroll into it, right, and look because that's what you want to see on pieces like this. You want to be able to see. I want to see down to the all the pen strokes on this stuff. I love looking at pieces like this because there's just so much detail in it.
I love the way he made he made Dane from Wetworks look metallic.
Mm-hmm.
He made he made Backlash look menacing. He made Grifter look like, okay, I'm about to shoot you in the face, and then Cole is just like huge, and he's Deathblow, you know it, and they're just so awesome. And then all he did was add smoke in the back, and the piece is amazing.
Well, I mean, we might as well just go right over to the next Brett booth because it's even more amazing in many ways. But this is a Backlash cover, so I mean, this is crazy. The perspective, the city beneath them. Holy, I mean, there's like not a wasted space on this artwork. It's crazy how much the detail is packed into it.
And he got the Savage Dragon,
right?
Which is, I think I have one Savage. This is my own. I have had over the 20 plus years. I've had 2 Savage Dragon pieces, and this one is my favorite booth cover. That other one's my favorite booth piece, but I felt that this was the best of the run. I thought it was the best Backlash cover he did. Like you said, everything is perfect about it.
Yeah, and you've got on your CAF gallery, the image is gigantic. So if anybody is a fan of Booth, this is a piece to go check out in Ben's CAF gallery because you can this on that one you can get in on the detail really good on it. But wow, that's just crazy.
Right. Dang. I think even in in one of the boots somewhere on this one, maybe it's this one. He wrote his signature as the tread.
Oh, really?
Yeah, and I forget if it's this one or another one, but it was like, wow, that's awesome. So much fun.
Well, yeah, this is gorgeous. Absolutely gorgeous. Sorry. I'm
Don't be sorry.
I'm ogling it.
I own it, and I'm still enjoying it on the screen.
I'm ogling it. Yeah, you got to definitely. I'm just going to post a link in the chat for everybody to check out this piece in particular because it is pretty amazing.
Yeah, Scott Wingo says he's also befuddled that Booth hasn't appreciated, and I said, I think it's because he hasn't done X-Men or Batman.
Right. It's got to be because he just was amazing from the get-go. I mean, to me, I just was like. I always just loved everything he's done. I mean,
But if you go out there, his pages are under $500 for old Wildstorm pages. Reasonably priced for great art.
Yeah, go figure. Doesn't make sense. Oh man. Well, here this is a piece that is behind you, just directly behind you. This Adam Hughes piece that you mentioned. What was it? So, sketchbook cover, I think.
Yeah. So. I don't know if I told the story when we were live or not, but my buddy Leslie married my art friend Aaron, and when they got married, I sent them a Joe Quesada Savage Dragon and Kid Death and Fluffy piece. Don't know how all of those combined, but because I knew him from the art world. And I knew her since I was young, since I was 18, I sent them that piece. And as a thank you, he had Adam draw this for me. He asked who my favorite character was, and I said Zealot, and he said, great. And I don't know if it was a year later or some amount of time later, this arrived in the mail. And Adam ended up using it as one of his, I think it was the Yahoo sketchbook. I don't know why it would have been called that, but I think it was his sketchbook, a sketchbook cover. And again, a gift from a friend, right? And signed from Best to Ben by Adam, and I think from Aaron. I think Aaron put that in there. But this is a keeper, even though it's a stunning Hughes that would be worth a ton. To me, it's worth everything. My best friend's husband sent it to me as a thank you. What's better than that?
Not much. And yeah, this is. I mean, I don't know the year on it, but I'm sure. Or mid 2000s, right? I mean, that was a period of Adam's work that it was before he really switched to the Copics and marker stuff. I loved seeing the pencil work that he was doing you know, at this period. I mean, it's gorgeous. I mean, he's such a draftsman, but okay, I mean, I mean, everything about, I just love it. I'm looking at the background, you know, the smoke from the gun. I mean, he's just done so much here. I mean, he did a lot of work on this thing. I mean, it's gorgeous. And he would crank these things out at cons.
It's the Zealot from Wildcats X-Men. You know, so it's like, not only is it Zealot, but it's also the Travis Zealot that I love.
Yep. And Jeff mentioned the same thing. Classic Hughes pencil sketch. I mean, that's exactly what I was thinking. Michael Callahan says he's signing off. Thanks for sharing, Ben. You have an incredible collection. I'll have to check out your CAF gallery. It's in the link, Michael, so please do.
Yeah, and send me an email from there.
Yes, exactly. Well, that's one of the benefits of doing these, is that typically you get a lot of traffic to your CAF gallery from that. And Jeff mentions too, it was probably $100 sketch, probably. And of course, I mean, like back in the day, I mean, there was the line to get one of those sketches was insane. I remember I'd gotten a Phoenix from him that I, you know, made a bad decision and had it inked. Should never have done that. And after it was inked, I didn't like it. So I sold it. But I loved the pencil piece was gorgeous. And it was one of the, and I don't know what I was thinking. I can't remember who I had him. It was another Gaijin guy. I had him ink it. So I thought, oh, it's going to come out good. And it just didn't.
Like Carl Story or something.
I think it was Carl Story. And I just thought it just didn't have the same feel. I didn't realize how much I loved the pencils until I didn't have the pencils anymore. So I see a piece like this, and that's what it just reminds me of, that time period where it's just where he was just on fire. So.
I did that with a Roos cover. I bought a cover from Butch Geiss and at MegaCon, and then I walked over to Mike Perkins, who was the inker at the time, and I said, if I send you a blue line, can you ink it for me? He said, sure, for $100. Great. I sent him a blue line, and then I had both of them side by side.
Mm-hmm.
They recently sold in Heritage, I think it was, for a lot more than I sold.
Well, I learned my lesson on that one. And again, it wasn't like Carl did a bad job either. It just changed it enough that I just didn't like it as much. And I did. I ended up selling it or trading. No, I didn't trade it, so I had to have sold it. But yeah, it was it's one of those. But early collecting period, right? I mean, that's my first 4 years of collecting, and I mean, gosh, I can't even remember all the mistakes I made. But that, I think, that was. I would never have thought of doing a blue line in 2004. I mean, Story's here right next to him. Okay, I'll just I'll bring it to him at the next show or something.
Right.
Go figure. Let's see what we got here now. Oh, last piece actually.
Well, I had to end with a Travis.
Yes, you did.
So I actually bought this from Rich last year, maybe beginning of this year. I don't remember when I put it on my CAF. It's probably right about that time is when I bought it. And it's issue 6, which in general Travis did smaller. So if issue 3 and issue 6, the pages are smaller, like they're like 8.5 by 11 size. I guess Wildstorm felt maybe he could work faster. And Rich told me that didn't make him work faster. He just packed the same amount of detail in tiny little space.
Yeah, that's crazy. And just, it was 1 year ago tomorrow that you posted the CAF. Yeah. So,
and part of my enjoyment of this issue is all the little Star Wars innuendos and references that he threw in. Here it's got Death of a Loser, right? And then on another page that I used to own, he's walking by Han Solo.
And Jeff Wan knows that pencil. I mean, it has Richard Friend's signature on it, so I assume it's really fine inks, right?
Yep, really fine inks. Actually, this is a really interesting piece. The panels of Spartan in the bottom 3 panels, the middle panel.
Yeah.
Nick, it really is gorgeous. That panel is art, but it's taped onto that area. But in a way that you can kind of lift it up, and underneath is Travis's pencils for Spartan in a different pose. So there are Travis pencils that are uninked on this under that. And it's really like a neat little Easter egg on this page that you can't see unless it's in your hand. Well, it's funny, your scan, that's why I put the link in the chat. The scan on CAF is so good, you can actually, you can see that you can see the shadow line around that piece that was pasted over it. Right.
So no, this is dang. I mean, it's more incredible looking at it now than earlier. I mean, it's just amazing that but Richard was just so on to do
Yeah.
this work.
Yeah. Richard is an absolutely incredible talent. He makes everybody shine. And he told me that he just had to like step into this job of like inking Travis. And imagine that, like stepping into this master. and you know, it doesn't matter. I don't know if it mattered what your experience level was, just to step into inking Travis was astounding. And he did such a good job. Such a good job. Look at the cross hatching on that episode 2 poster. Like how small did his pen have to, like, is there even a fine enough pen to do that?
Well,
You know what I mean?
I mean, it would be cool. I mean, because I know you don't have it on your CAF either, but if you were still able to scan it, it'd be cool to see what that pencil piece underneath that. I mean, it's not pasted on, right? Or you wouldn't have been able to see that it was pencil. Is it just taped on?
I don't remember what it is. I'll have to take a look, but you can definitely like peel the lower left corner up and see, like, peek
so you could see it. Okay, that's cool. I mean, I would have, because I don't think I can. I'm trying to think if I've ever seen, like, maybe an uninked page by Travis. I mean, there must be out there. I would just love to see how much detail he was putting into the pencils before the inker got it, because it's not like a John Buscema where everything's just very loose and you just know what John was going for, and then the inker could come in and do it. I mean, I would think that Richard's getting this piece, and these pencils are as tight.
Yeah, they were extremely tight. In fact, Rich recently just did a how he's got his Patreon and he's got his channel. I subscribed to his channel, and he did a Travis Wildcats roundup, basically, and just went through a whole bunch of Travis pages and various parts of Travis's career. And he had a whole bunch of scans of uninked pages, and they're stunning as well.
Well, shoot, I'm gonna have to go. I have not. I've watched a few shows on his channel, but I guess I missed that one. I'm gonna make a note of checking that out maybe tomorrow. That's cool. No, Richard's again. He's a cool guy, and he tells some great stories.
Great stories.
Yeah. No, he's somebody I've always enjoyed getting a chance to talk with, because I think he was at San Diego this year. I talked with him. That was the last place I got to chat with him.
And he was in that studio at the time when all of the stuff that I enjoyed was happening. Right.
But yeah, that's Joseph mentioned right here. You can see Travis pencil details in his. Yep, makes sense. Oh man, well Ben, this has been awesome, man.
Yeah, really.
Well, really. Almost 2.5 years in the making since after I blew you off.
That's totally fine. I'm happy.
But no, this is good, man. I mean, I do you get out to cons too? Because we've never met, right?
Very little. Before we have 4 kids, so getting to cons is difficult, and they're all in the 9 to 15 age range. But I do try to go to the Comic Art Con in New Jersey.
Yeah.
I haven't really been to any cons aside from that recently. I used to go to MegaCon every year, but then we had kids, so that ended that little maneuver.
I know. I used to go to Heroes all the time too, and because it was Father's Day, so it was kind of, even when my kids were little, it was good. But after I got the 3rd one, we never went again. So so I think I squeezed out like 4 or 5 cons in a row, and then as soon as the 3rd kid came around, that was it. We never took that Father's Day trip through MegaCon to go to Myrtle Beach, because we would go to Myrtle Beach for like 3 days after that. But yeah, kids kind of put the kibosh on that. But Heroes is always a good show. If you ever could make it to a show like that, we had a really great time this last year. I mean, there was probably 200 collectors. We had that kickoff party the Friday night before. It's one of the best experiences I ever had at a show. So
Dave and I joke quite often that, well, if it's $800 to go to a show, that's $800 in art I could be buying.
All right, very true. You're being far too practical, Ben.
Listen, if I were independently wealthy, I'd be at every show.
Take your kids. Marcus says kids get free sketches. Spouses sometimes too, everybody. You never know.
Spouses get vesses. Children get sketches. Spouses get vesses.
Oh man, let's see. The basic says friend also did a video on Adam Hughes sketchbooks. Really? Oh, all right, I'll make a note of that
Oh,
one
maybe
too.
my thing is on on that thing.
I'm gonna.
Maybe my cover's on his review of the Hughes sketchbooks. I'll have to take a look.
If there's one thing I have a lot of, it's Adam Hughes sketchbooks. There was a time where it's like every time I saw him at a show, I just bought another one. So I've held on to. I've got at least 10 that I've picked up over the years. So, but Ben, yeah, man, this is totally fun. I'm sorry it took us so long to get this thing taken care of, but I'm glad we did it. And you know, again, if people haven't had the opportunity, the link to Ben's CAF Gallery is in the description for the show. You got to check it out. Find a few pieces you like. Leave a few comments. You know, a few thumbs up are okay, but comments are always most appreciated. And and Kazra says, great to see, see that you guys are doing so well.
Hear from you. You should email me, or maybe I'll email you, because I definitely forgot that it was you that sold me that piece, and I'm sorry about that.
Kazra is in my neck of the woods now too. He's in the Orlando area. So
nice.
Yeah, we're gonna get together for drinks real soon. I hope, Kazra. Maybe around New Year's. You got to let me know about that. But it would be nice to get to. I haven't seen Kazra shoot since I think a Wizard World Chicago 10 years ago. I mean, it feels like it's been a long time. But again, Ben, lots of fun, man. I sincerely appreciate it. Thanks for doing this, and again, everybody for hanging out with us too. This was a great show. We got to look at some great '90s art.
My wheelhouse.
That is true. All right, everybody, have a wonderful